shit this year.
It's like Elon Musk said about yesterday's price went up 12% in Tesla stock.
These people
Went up
are
12% because Hertz made it bought an order for 100,000 Teslas over the next year. And so the stock price went up. It makes perfect sense for Hertz because you want the general population to start driving electric vehicles as opposed to just wealthy people. But he said, he, now even more so. But he said, well, I don't know why the price went up. There was never
Wait for
any
Mr. Costa to get
about
back.
selling 100,000 cars just to boom. He said, my problem is production, not sales. Which is kind of cool when you poo-poo 100,000 units being sold at 50,000 a piece.
Exactly.
All right, I'm going to show you. I went there today.
There's a movie about it, The Aviator.
Howard Hughes.
I'm not old enough to have stuff.
That's from the north
To know you
property owners.
other than
Look at the size of that thing. Look at that. Look at the house.
How far are you?
It would,
They're allowed
it would,
35.
no, they're not.
Yeah, I met
It doesn't fit. I know.
California.
When you look.
Call the meeting to order. First order of business is roll call.
James Miller,
Here.
Thomas Silvera.
Here.
Eric Curtin.
Here.
Judith Rosenthal.
here.
Rick Lombardi.
Here.
Stephen Hutler.
Here.
And Thomas Heaney here.
Second order of business would have been the adoption of minutes. We had some technical difficulties, so we're going to table that until our next meeting to review and approve the meeting minutes from September 28th. So after that, we're going to read through the continued petitions. If you're here and ready to go forward, after the petition is read, please come up to the mic and let us know you're ready to go forward. Mr. Heaney, if you could read the first petition.
Atlantic Beach Suites 2, limited liability company owner by their attorney David P. Martlin Esquire, and that's at 42 through 44 and 56 Wave Avenue.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, David Martlin. Again, that's a matter has to return to the planning board. We got to re-advertise for the development plan review and go through, I guess, go back through the technical review committee and DPR process. So I would suggest that you continue it for 3 months.
Okay, so that's going to be our February meeting or our January?
January,
Okay,
the regular January.
okay.
We typically have 2.
We don't have dates yet for next year, so I'm just checking. I might have them, but I don't think I do. Do you think we're going to hear it next year?
Yes.
Okay, because this was first advertised in 2018.
And if you recall, we actually went through the full TRC, went through the development plan
No,
review.
I understand.
We had a full hearing here, and then technical issues were raised relative to it. And we looked at other development plans, whether or not we could utilize the existing building, but because of coastal issues and things of that nature, they want to proceed on with the present plan.
Okay, Mr. Martin, we'll see you in January.
Thank you.
Mr. Costa, you have that date? You don't have it yet?
I don't have it on hand, no.
Okay.
I believe it's the 25th. It's,
We're going to call it January 25th, 2022.
Petition of Telly Amarat and Elizabeth Amarat, owners, by their attorney, Christopher J. Bean Esquire. This is at 163 Aquidneck Avenue.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Chris Bean for the applicants. There was a mix-up on the agenda, the description of the petition, and on the advice of the town solicitor because of Open Meetings Act implications. This matter will have to be continued to next month.
Okay, Mr. Bean, we're going to try to fit in, I'm going to ask in a minute if my committee can meet on the 9th of November, because I'd like to clear up our agenda. Our docket's getting clogged up. Would you be able to go forward if we met on November 9th?
I would think so. Attorney Quay is also here. Can't speak for her. She's representing some of the objectors. I would believe I believe we could do the 9th.
Okay, so I'm going to continue this pending Mr. Costa setting up the 9th, but we plan to go forward on the 9th, and you'll be the top of the ticket.
If I may be heard, I would request that it be on the November, the regularly scheduled meeting, only to allow, I believe we will have an an oppositional expert that would be available then, and not, I'm unsure if they're available on the 9th, just because it's not a regularly scheduled.
Can you
meeting.
speak into the microphone, please?
I apologize. Allison Quay for abutters Renee Bissell and Mike Kastner. I'm asking that the meeting be continued to the regularly scheduled meeting so that our expert may be available on that date. I am unsure if they're available on the 9th.
Okay, I have no problem with that. Mr. Bean, do you have a problem with that? 27th?
23rd.
So that's going to be continued to November 23rd?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for the record, that was for a special use and a variance. Petition of Sens Corporation owner in GD Middletown, West Main Road 1, limited liability company applicant, and this is at 0 West Main Road.
Read the special use at the same time. Hold on one second, Mr. Lynch.
And that's for both a special use and a variance.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jay Lynch on behalf of the applicant. This matter is mired in the TRC review process. I know that the applicant's engineers have provided Mr. Hall with some additional information just within the last day or two. I think Mr. Hall is going to respond to that. Then what we're going to have to do is get the matter back on the TRC for a full hearing, get it to the planning board, and then get it back to you. So I don't anticipate that we're going to be ready until at least January.
Okay. And how confident are you that we're going to be able to hear this in January? This has been on our agenda since my birthday in 2020.
I am not sure what the holdup is at the staff level. I can't say with any degree of certainty that, TRC is going to be signing off on this in time for the January meeting.
Okay, so we're going to continue this to the January 25th meeting? And hopefully we'll hear it then. Otherwise, we're going to have to talk further about speeding up our docket.
Thank you.
Petition of Newport National Real Estate LLC owners by their attorney, Robert M. Silva Esquire. This is at 425 Mitchell's Lane.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, David Martland. Mr. Silva is out of state this evening. I know that he would ask for a continuance of this as this is still before the Technical Review Committee. I think it's just about in position to be heard by the Planning Board.
So the regular
Shortly.
scheduled meeting?
I would do it to the regularly scheduled meeting, yes.
23 November.
Yep.
23 November.
Thank you.
Petition of Frank and Eleanor Fenchner, owner, and David Kopsak, applicant, and this is at 576 Tuckerman Avenue.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, J. Russell Jackson, Miller Scott, Holbrook, and Jackson. I represent abutters who are objecting to this petition, and that would be Mr. Joseph Kobalak and Elizabeth Tabor, who live right next door. In speaking with Mr. Regan earlier, we discovered that the conflict solicitor was not available this evening, and Mr. Regan and his firm are conflicted from handling this matter on behalf of the town. So after reviewing that situation with him, he indicated the matter should be continued to next month. If you're going to have a special meeting on November 9th, I know my clients would be fine with that, but I don't believe the applicant's counsel is here this evening. I'd be happy to communicate with them tomorrow, and if we communicate with Mr. Costa, perhaps we can get that added to November 9th.
That would be good. I'm going to go forward with November 9th because we've got, even when we get to the new petitions this evening.
Right.
So I will put you on November 9th, and you will be top of the ticket.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Petition of Eastern Pond Realty LLC owners by their attorney Gerard A. Galvin Esquire, and this is at 55 Johnny Clark Road. It's both a variance and special use.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. We're ready to proceed tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You'll be the first case we hear, Mr. Galvin.
Petition of Daniel Donovan III, owner, and Michael Sullivan, applicant, and this is at 600 Aquidneck Avenue.
Are you ready to go forward this evening?
We are ready to go.
That's all I need to know. Thank you. You'll be our second petition. Thanks.
Petition of Christine Lowney, owner, and Michael P. Tierra T-Ticket LLC, and this is at 38 Nicholson Crescent.
Ready to go forward.
Okay, thank you. You'll be our third petition. That concludes all our continued petitions, so we're going to go ahead and start the meeting, the hearings. It looks like, depending on how our process goes, we're going to try to get through as many as we can this evening. Any that we don't get through this evening that's new on the agenda will be continued, we'll pick up on the 9th of November, because it's our goal. We typically don't meet in December, so we'd like to clear the docket with the 2 meetings in November. So thank you, everyone, for their patience listening to everything. Go ahead, Mr. Heaney. Read the full petition of Easton's Pond.
Yep. Petition of Easton's Pond Realty LLC owners by their attorney Gerard A. Galvin Esquire for a variance from sections 903 and 603 to redevelop an obsolete office building in poor condition. Small portion of the proposed structure will be 46 feet tall from average grade, where 40 is allowed. However, the structure will be at all times below the 40 feet from actual grade. Said real estate is located at 55 John Clark Road and further identified as Lot 33 on Tax Assessor's Plat 115. In addition, there's a petition from Easton's Pond Realty LLC owners by their attorney Gerard A. Galvin Esquire for a special use from sections 902 and 602. Office Park zoning district requires a special use permit for a private self-storage use. Small portion of purpose structure will be 46 feet tall from average grade where 40 feet is allowed. However, the structure will at all times be below the 40-foot actual grade. Said real estate is located at 55 John Clark Road and further identified as Lot 33 on Tax Assessor's Plat 115.
Good evening, Mr. Galvin.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Gerard Galvin on behalf of Easton Pond Realty LLC.
Could you speak up, please, Mr. Galvin? I can't
Speak
hear
up?
you, please.
Yes.
I'm getting old, I can't hear anymore.
So Section 501L of the zoning code describes the office park zone as a zone for park-like settings for office uses and miscellaneous compatible uses. And the town council has identified self-storage as a compatible use with a special use permit. So the proposal here is for a self-storage facility for high-end vehicles. We have not heard any objections from any abutters or anybody with standing. Now, as you're aware from that property, this is the office park, and Valley Road is the western boundary, and John Clark is the eastern, and there's a steep slope from John Clark going down to Valley Road. And this large change in grade is really the basis for our request for dimensional relief tonight, which we'll be getting into. This project has gone through several levels of review, the technical review committee, and the planning board, which has rendered a unanimous positive recommendation for development plan review. There should be a memo in your file with that decision. And if that's not in your file as part of the application and part of the record, I do have that as an exhibit if you need that. But I want to make particular reference to the fact that in that memo, the planning board found this project consistent with the comprehensive plan. They made findings that this project will not injure the appropriate use of property in the surrounding area, and that the approval of this project will not cause any conditions inimical to the public health, safety, or welfare. So tonight I have Blake Henderson, who's a member of Easton Pond LLC, here to testify briefly about the project. Civil engineer Lynn Small is here to address any technical questions you might have about the plan. Spencer McComb is the architect on the project. He can walk you through the design very briefly. And Jim Houle will testify about how this application and the request for relief meet the criteria.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? So if there's no more questions at this point, I'd like to call Mr. Henderson. I'm gonna work off one mic.
Mr. Henderson, raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony this evening will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
Blake Henderson, 55 John Clark Road, Middletown, Rhode Island.
So, Mr. Henderson, and I do want to make sure you have copies of the complete application there with records, correct? Mr. Chair?
I do.
Mr. Henderson, when did your entity or you purchase this property?
2006.
And since that time, what is the use of the property?
It's been office space the whole time.
And can you describe how your operation of office space has progressed from 2006 to the present?
Up until 2006, when I bought the property, it had been a single-use, single-tenant type of operation. It's 18,900 square feet approximately.
Can you speak more into the microphone, please?
On more than 2 acres.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Can't hear you.
I'll lean over. And then when the world financial crisis hit, the company I had in there, which I owned, Northeast Engineers, had to pare back severely. And so they went down to about 25% of the building use. The economy had come to a halt. Banks weren't lending. So I could not find a buyer or a tenant to fill the remaining space. So I had to go to what I thought at the time was a temporary solution, and that was to rent single office spaces to small businesses. That actually did start to work out okay, except that when you rent small offices, you can't rent the common areas. So the lobby, the halls, the utility rooms, the bathrooms, the kitchens, the conference room, the loading bay, all these areas are now no longer rentable. And as They're not rentable. Yeah, you can't pass that on to a small business tenant. And most of the small business tenants wanted to have just a commercial address, small space to work, sign on the directory, make it look like their company was viable, not a at-home type business. I kept looking from 2009 up until last year for that buyer or tenant, and they never materialized. In March of last year, we had a national emergency and a COVID shutdown, and I lost numerous long-term tenants that have been with me for quite a while. They either went out of business or went home because their income streams stopped. At that point, I knew that I could not continue the operation the way it was today, and because of the glut of office space, there would be no reasonable offer to buy the property or to have a single tenant. Newer tenants would come in and actually negotiate the rent down because they knew there was so much office space out there. If you go to a popular realtor's website today and look at commercial office space for rent, you'll find that he lists 48 commercial properties on Aquinic Island with office space for rent. 22 in Newport, 19 in Middletown, 7 in Portsmouth. And that's just one realtor. That doesn't include the other realtors, doesn't include the government-owned buildings that are renting space commercially presently. So as a business decision, I had to start looking for an alternate use to this property. I looked at a hotel.
Well, that's good, yes. I was going to just bring you to the point of, it's pretty clear that the office space was no longer a viable use, correct?
Yes, it would take me years to replace the tenants I lost due to the COVID shutdown, literally years. And when I looked at the present state of the market, I knew it could be a very untenable period of time to get that building back up to the kind of occupancy that I would like to see or had.
And how did you come to the determination of this proposed use?
Well, I did look at different uses, so, like I said, the hotel, public storage buildings, solar field. But as I looked closer to the car storage idea, I have a lot of friends that have very nice museum-quality collectible automobiles. And they're always complaining that they can't find a place to put them, particularly as they went from being toys to being very expensive investments, that they wanted a secure space, they wanted to be able to share their car with other enthusiasts, and those types of spaces don't exist presently on the island. And if you store your car with a commercial company, you can't get in to see it unless they're open. You can't get in to see it unless the facility is open. So it turns out there is a demand for privately owned storage space for luxury automobiles. And while researching the economics of it, I found in Florida and in California several projects which had been hugely successful and sold out before they were completed to car nuts. People who want to invest in these cars, take good care of them, watch them appreciate and value, and share them with their friends. So in looking at how this project would fit on this site, it actually fits better than any other proposition in that if you look at the plans, it actually follows the contours down the hill very nicely. And it's the first project I've done in a long time which actually reduces traffic count. It also reduces pavement coverage. It puts in current water quality standards. And it's actually much nicer looking than what's there today.
So let's talk about the proposal a little bit. There's 30 to 32 units proposed. And can you describe how you envision a unit owner utilizing that property, that unit?
Yeah, there's a base floor area where they would store their cars. And then there's a mezzanine area, which is about 30% of the floor area, so that you could have a place to put a wine fridge, sit with your friends, look at your cars, watch the Patriots game if you want to. And the number of units is not fixed because the last project I looked at in California, people would buy multiple units and then combine them because they had too many cars. I was recently in a car vault locally. I call it a car vault because that's what I'm calling them, where a private citizen bought a tradesman unit and put 20 incredibly invaluable cars in there, along with a mezzanine to sit with his friends and look at his appreciating assets. So the demand is there. People are doing it individually. And one of the big attractions to this type of project is that you are in it with a community of car enthusiasts.
And just to be clear, you referenced a tradesman center unit, but that type of use would be prohibited this place would be managed, correct?
There will be restrictions on this property so that it's used only as a vintage automobile storage facility with like-minded people, almost like a fraternity or sorority.
And so my understanding is, once you have a certain number of pre-sales and know this will be viable, we'll be doing a condominium declaration, which will impose those restrictions on the uses of the units, correct?
That's correct. I think between the zoning officials, the condominium association, and the property management company, there'll be plenty of enforcement going on this property.
So your intention is to sell the units individually, they're condos,
Yes.
it's not gonna be rental?
If they don't sell, I'll be leasing car storage. But I've gotten a lot of very interested parties already willing to sign up, so I think this will go well.
And the use will be restricted to that use, regardless of it's a purchase or a lease scenario. Now, do you envision having a permanent office as part of the complex?
I don't know, because I have certain clients asking for an office, and, well, not clients, but potential buyers, and other buyers who are saying, why pay for an office if you don't need one? So it's, right now, I'm not planning on an office. If there was one, it would be a property manager's type office.
Is there anything else you'd like to add about the project?
No, I know I'm not unbiased, but I really like this project. I think it's a good fit for the area. My abutters like it. I think it's time that we looked at redevelopment opportunities in the corporate park. The need for large office buildings that we had back in the 70s and 80s for defense contractors, that has literally gone away. Unless it's an owner-occupied piece of real estate in that office park, there's no demand for it. And that then pushes down rents, pushes down valuations. It's a negative for the town and the property owners.
Mr. Henderson,
Yes.
would owners of the unit or tenants only be able to store their vehicle there, or would they be permitted to do work on their car on site?
Most of the owners that I have talked to are not tinkerers, but some of them are. So yes, I would see some of the enthusiasts actually popping the hood and changing the oil and getting themselves a little dirty.
Mr. Henderson, what's to keep them from running a business, a car repair business in the unit?
That's actually prohibited in the condo documents, and I guaranteed that at the planning board.
And Mr. Chair, if you look at the recommendation from the planning board, there are certain conditions that came with that recommendation, and it included that it be only used for storage. It also did, in reference to that tinkering, there was a requirement that certain, let's see,
Spill prevention.
that a spill prevention tray be installed in each unit as sort of a basic cautionary act for changing the oil or something like that. But there'll be zoning restrictions and zoning enforcement, as well as internal condo restrictions in place governing that type of use.
Will that be stipulated in the condo documents?
It will. And we have no problem with that being an express condition of any approval we achieve tonight.
Okay, because I thought I heard you say earlier that you weren't sure whether or not you were going to have a property manager. It seems like we've got a lot of items here that someone needs to be responsible for monitoring, because even though the idea as presented seems like a nice, unique idea, there's a lot of things that could happen, particularly to each one of these units as they're sold off to individuals, that needs to be monitored.
There's no question that as these units are sold off, there'll be individual owners owning that unit, subject to the regulations of the town and the regulations of the condo association. The condo association will be a governing and an enforcement body in and of itself, with the town regulations superimposed over it. So, there may be, the association may have a third-party property manager, like the property managers you see around town, to handle maintenance, to handle the needs that arise that many condo associations tap into. I think relative to there being an office on site, that may not need to be a requirement as part of the condo association.
It's not necessary in terms of, it has to happen, but this idea of having a condo association and having it not be the town's primary responsibility for looking after the occupants to see that they're following what you're proposing here, I think that that's realistic, that needs to come as part of the proposal.
Well, I understand your point. We certainly, assuming this takes off and is viable and will be proceeding with it, the first order of business will be creating what we feel will be very strong condo declaration with those restrictions, which would be the frontline defense or enforcement action. The association would be entitled to take enforcement action against a unit owner. And of course, the town retains its ability, if the association notifies the town of a problem, there's the additional level of enforcement there.
Mr. Galvin, how exactly would the covenants within the declaration be enforced?
Well, just as in any association, there'd be notice, there'd be demands made.
Through a manager, presumably, or?
Well, there'll be a board of the association, and there'll be voting percentages allowed in the association, and ultimately there would be a condo association board voting to take action against a unit owner that may be exceeding what he or she is allowed to do at a unit.
Thank you.
That's what we envision.
Now, I think I can confidently state that it would be easy to police a place like this. I have been watching the Monterey Motorsport Project on their live site camera for a year now, and these types of projects are remarkably quiet. Any activity is picked up by site cameras that all the members of the condo association have access to watch. A property manager in his due diligence would see activity going on site because it is so quiet that doesn't meet the standards. And the people that invest in these units and in these automobiles, I think, will be very diligent in making sure they safeguard their investment in a dream garage or car vault, whatever you want to call it.
And when the tinkering happens, would it always be inside the structure, or are there like driveways and people might have their cars outside and the tinkering happens outside?
We have allotted a car space per unit, which actually is probably more than they need. But we're not allowing work outside the unit. You can't pull your car across the fire lane and start dropping the engine on the ground. There's no outdoor storage allowed of any materials, any automobiles. We want to keep this place clean and good-looking and keep those values up.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman? Yes. I have a couple of questions and a couple of concerns. First of all, I'm looking at the comprehensive plan under land use, page 15, I think it is. And it says this corporate park and zoning district were created by the town to promote the development of high-tech and defense-related industry at that location. That's a very narrow definition of what the vision was for this corporate park. I will agree that initially, when the corporate park was built, that wasn't necessarily the vision, and then it was an industrial/corporate park, but it's turned into a professional corporate park. Offices, a bank, child and family services. I've been up there on numerous occasions, and I've checked it out. I don't see anything that fits this use. I don't see anything that fits this use. And I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned that we need, in this town, and as a board, to take the comprehensive plan and enforce it, and with the spirit that it was written. And this particular use, in my opinion, this looks absolutely nothing like what's up there right now. Nothing.
Which is a plus.
In my opinion, maybe in your eyes, I think this use somewhere else, I think it's a great concept, to be honest with you. I like classic cars. I enjoy that whole thing. But this doesn't fit. This doesn't fit, as far as I'm concerned, And you can't get me off that right now.
Well, Mr. Lombardi, office buildings don't create jobs. The
But-
reason
but they
those
do.
buildings were built.
But
No,
they do. Does this create jobs? I want you to tell me how many jobs this is going to create.
The people that build it, maintain it, manage it, work on the cars that are in there.
Once it's built, that's done. The cars, mechanic, I get it. Mechanics are out there, all over the place that work on these cars. I want to know how this building brings people every day into that corporate park and creates a job, because it doesn't. And that's what the corporate park was meant for, to create jobs. This does not create jobs.
Mr. Henderson, if I may ask a question, a follow-up question to that. You have a large office building at the site right now,
Yes.
correct? How many offices are in that building?
46.
How many jobs is that creating?
The people that mow the lawn, paint the walls, me managing the property.
How many jobs have you seen leave that office park that office building in the last 10 years?
Significant.
They're not coming there because you have that building, are they?
Mr.
leaving
Galvin,
there.
and I can tell you that there are a lot of buildings up there that are presently up-to-date, modern buildings that create jobs. There are people employed in that office park. Mr. Henderson's building, to his application and just what he said, is obsolete. It's obsolete because he chose to let it get obsolete. He hasn't sunk any money into that building. I drove by there. I looked at it. Now, you have an investment in that building. Maybe you should have taken the time to invest money into that building, to bring it up to date. I can see it happening right now on Aquidneck Avenue. There's an office building that's being completely renovated and brought up to date, and it looks beautiful. And maybe you should have done the same thing before you resorted to this. You let your building get to the state that it's in. And hang on, let me finish.
Mr.
I'm-
Lombardi, can you wrap up your comments?
Yeah, I'm going to wrap them up. I got a couple more. The other piece of this is, I personally don't want to see alcohol consumed in this building. It's not, I don't believe it should happen. There's no control over that. And if there's one thing we do in this town, we're pretty strict about how alcohol is consumed and served in this town. And the condo owners, as far as I'm concerned, there should be no alcohol consumed there if this is approved. And I would suggest that the board put that as a restriction. That's my opinion.
Sir, in the last 6 years, I've spent about $180,000 redoing the inside of the building, replacing pumps, boilers, chillers, light systems. It's been a substantial investment to try to attract people to that building.
I looked at
But
the
those
outside of
jobs
that building.
aren't
It
there.
sure doesn't look like it to me.
It's a brick building, sir. What can you do?
This doesn't fit. Plain and simple. In my opinion, it doesn't fit. Maybe somewhere else, but not in the corporate park, not in an office park. This is a glorified car storage facility. It's a parking garage.
Thank you, Mr. Lombardi. Any other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, of the vacancies that you referenced in Middletown, how many are in the corporate park?
I did not count that number. I don't know.
Okay.
I have a question for Mr. Galvin. Were you at the planning board meetings?
For this project?
Yes.
I was. I was at the TRC, the site visit with the planning board, and the,
I read the planning board's decision, and they cite that it met the comprehensive plan. Were questions made and answered about the comp plan at the planning board?
there were, and I think one of the biggest, and Mr. Hool will speak to a number of the elements of consistency with the comp plan, and I was going to reserve to
That's-
rebut that. But I think one of the most important ones is that the comp plan speaks to a desire to redevelop commercial property and modernizing commercial property, as opposed to what Mr. Lombardi is seeking. Put this is a nice project, but put it somewhere else. Well, the comp plan doesn't want us to go find a piece of vacant land and put this up. The comp plan would prefer, the comp plan would prefer that we find an older office building that needs revitalization and putting that to a good use where there's a demand for it. So it's repurposing property, and I think that's one of the most important elements that we meet.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the,
I just have one question. What do you need to sell these for to make them work?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
What do you need to sell each unit for in order to make it work? And what I'm getting at is the viability of it. Like,
Oh, okay. Yeah, we've actually done a market study on it, and we have realtors ready to start selling it. And there's a range that makes it work. I already know what it's going to cost to build. And if I can get $280 a square foot, then the project's a home run.
and each unit is roughly how big?
About 1,000 square feet, if they're not combined.
Okay.
I have one question. What's on the second floor of this? You see the garage doors there. Is it all open where you can put, I see there's a place to put 2 cars on top of each other.
Yes.
I just wanted to know is there a second floor in this building or what
It's
is
not
it?
really a second floor, it's a mezzanine. When you walk into the unit, it's 25 feet wide, 30 feet long, and it's 24 feet high.
Okay,
So it's like walking into an airplane hangar.
okay.
And then you can go up a set of stairs. The mezzanine is high enough that you can stack the cars that you're collecting and put under there safely. And it depends how you want it oriented. I've seen different ways. Then up on the mezzanine, you have the ability to see all of your cars and talk about them and enjoy your investment.
Okay, but it's not like you're not having office space on the top and then
It's
this
just-
one-
it's just an
that's
open-
that's what the question,
Oh.
just the way it looks with all the windows, like it looks like there's a second story in the thing. And whether it has a spot up there where you can sit up there, that's not a problem. I just was asking that right
No,
now.
it's really a
I just
platform.
wanted to know what it was, that's all.
The reason there are so many windows is one of the lessons I learned in owning real estate and office buildings is that the brighter the space, the easier to rent. People don't like dark spaces.
any other questions? You can bring up your next
If
question.
there's no more questions for Mr. Henderson, then I'll ask Lynn Small to come up.
Thank you.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Now I can go through the process of qualifying Ms. Small. I know she's been here many times. If you'll accept.
No,
her as an
we recognize she's appeared before us numerous times as an engineer, so we'll recognize you.
Thank
Lynn,
you.
raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony this evening will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
Lynn Small, Northeast Engineers, 6 Valley Road, Middletown.
Thank you.
So, Lynn, I wanted to bring you up so you can answer any questions the board might have. But to start off, I just ask you perhaps to explain the permitting process that this plan has already gone through at the various agencies.
Okay, so the project comprises just under an acre, and it's on John Clock Road. It drains, it has about a 10-foot grade change across the footprint of the building, and it drains towards Valley Road. The permitting for the project, actually, we're over an acre, I'm apologizing for that up front. The permitting process for the project so far required your regular pre-application meeting with the town. We then engineered the plans and submitted them both to DEM RIPD's program for review and comment and eventual approval, and to the Department of Transportation. Valley Road is a state road, and while we're not fronting on there traffic-wise, our drainage system discharges towards their swale and drainage system. So they had to review the project from a drainage perspective. The traffic is a reduction, and it doesn't warrant a traffic study. It doesn't have enough traffic during your peak hours to warrant any traffic analysis on the project. And then once we had the 2 state approvals in hand, we went back to the town and started the TRC process. In the interim, we had done a site walk with the planning board, and then we had our meeting with the city officials or town officials, received their comments, made revisions to the plan, get favorable recommendation, went to the planning board. We went to the planning board meeting, had a public meeting where they heard all the testimony regarding the project, the drainage system, utilities, and the general layout of the site. They provided their approval, and then we came before you here at the zoning board.
So just to reiterate, this, the project is compliant with all stormwater runoff regulations, correct?
Yes, it is.
And from the engineering perspective, is there anything in this plan that causes any health or safety concerns?
On the contrary, the existing site conditions provide absolutely no stormwater mitigation. Under the proposed conditions, we're going to be providing pre-treatment and water quality treatment. We're also reducing the impervious area from the site, so you'll have a reduction in your peak runoff from the property. So it'll be an improvement from that respect. We're also reducing the sewer flow, so there'll be less taxing of the infrastructure for the town.
And is there anything in the plans that, in your professional opinion, would negatively impact abutting properties or other areas, other properties in the area?
I believe not at all. We're proposing to change the stormwater to any abutters to 0. All the stormwater will go through our controlled features into the controlled state system after providing a reduction in that peak runoff. So you'll actually have an improvement to our abutters and the town and the city, in the state.
Those are just the points I wanted to hit, but if there's any technical questions or engineering questions you all have, please ask.
Any questions of the board?
No.
I don't know.
You have one? Go ahead, Mr.
Are there any provisions to handle if someone's working on a car, oil, transmission fluid, some type of a spill? Where is that going to go? I mean, would it, do we have an answer for that? Is there something?
If there are any floor drains within the building, they would discharge into the sewer system through a oil water separator and then go into the municipal sewer system. As part of any commercial project in the town of Middletown, we're required, after we get the town approval, but before we get our building permit, to get the approval from the wastewater treatment reviewers that they have for the city of Newport at the municipal wastewater treatment plant. They do an environmental review of each commercial project before they connect into their system. So they'll be doing that review.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I think we're good.
Thank you.
Then I'll call Spencer McComb for some brief testimony on the design. And I'm not sure if we have these renderings that we can put up, but if not, I know you have them in the package. And I just wanted Spencer to, well, actually,
Let me
similar-
swear him in.
Okay, thanks.
Spencer, do you swear the testimony this evening will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
Spencer McComb, 42 West Main Road, Middletown. MCCOMBE.
And similar to Ms. Small, Mr. McComb appears regularly, and I'd like to ask that he be recognized as an expert in.
He is recognized as an expert in the field of architecture.
Thank you. So, Spencer, can you describe the process you engaged in when you were asked to develop a design for this project?
Sure. So we're trying to, obviously you know the concept, but to create individual, what looks like individual buildings that work their way down the slope of the hill. We know we can go 40, but it's a long building that comes down the hill. So you can see in the section that's provided that although, you know, at any point, if you measured the building, we're at 35, 5 foot under the height. So let's say child and family that's next door is all of 40, and it's a much bigger structure visually from any point. And so the idea here was to create these little New England vistas that, you know, we followed what Middletown wants us to do from the planning regulations. So undulating facades, peaked roofs, glass that has divisions in it. This is all straight out of what Middletown planning regulations want us to do. And so when we presented in front of them, they were very pleased at how we had accomplished that.
And just to hone in on the easternmost portion of the building, which is where we have the slight encroachment on the height limitation. That is there to kind of complete the consistent design with the design standards as laid out by the Middletown code, correct?
Yeah, you can see how the facades, we have gables that step every fourth bay. You can see how that kind of works orderly up the hill. And so the final gable that would be on the highest end of the property obviously mimics other ones throughout. And so we're just sort of creating a mantra that runs along there that would sort of complete the look of the building, also give it a nice New England feel all the way around, and again, following what the planning board's intentions were for this style building.
And I'll open it up to any questions that you might have for Spencer.
I have a question. Are there any bathroom facilities?
Sure, each unit will have its own half bath.
On the mezzanine?
No. It may be, but it'll probably be on the lower floor and plumbed into the slab.
Okay. I just didn't see anything in the plans.
Right, there actually may, each unit may be individually laid out, and so that'll work into the actual design of each individual unit.
Just a point of clarification, both the variance and special use, one of the issues is that the average grade for the structure from one end to the other is 46 feet. Okay, and I think you've addressed that, but just to be clear and make sure it's in the record, that you're stating that each of these stair-step buildings as they go up the hill, each of them are no greater than 35 feet above that grade that they're sitting on.
If I could just clarify, each of those are 35 feet from actual grade.
Actual grade.
From actual grade. From the average grade, the easternmost one.
It's still 46 feet.
Right, but when you're looking at it, that peak would only be 35 feet from where you're standing.
I got it.
And just, Spencer, it's only that first cupola that goes up high, right? That goes above
The
the
first-
40.
That's the one that goes above. The rest comply, actually.
Right,
There's-
that's, when I looked at it, I couldn't find it. I was going to call Chris and say, hey, how does the math work on this one? Because I couldn't see it, and I can see it now, that it's just that first cupola.
It's just that first one, but again, to have there be a consistent flow from one end of the structure to the other, that's why we're seeking the height variance.
So you can imagine if that was just a flat roof, which would allow us to comply, it would look ugly on the front of the building to have this mansard flat look. And so just to complete it, we did it. And I think it's pretty clear in the site section that you can see in A 1.0 that why we did it and how just that little top of the gable that would clip to comply.
And not only that, if the applicant was trying to maximize his space, he could have had that rooftop create a lot more space for him all the way down that grade. That's not the goal here. It's not to maximize it. It's to create a good product that fits into the
Or to
scene.
just have multiple buildings that were 40 feet tall stepping down and just not connected to one another. That would get you much more volume in that space than this design accomplishes.
Okay, if there's no more questions for Spencer, I'll ask Jim Hool to come up.
That'd be great, thank you. Mr. Hool, raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony this evening will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
James Hool, 198 Union Street, Portsmouth, Rhode Island.
Mr. Hool, you've appeared before this board on numerous occasions in the capacity of a real estate expert. We're going to continue with that tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I submitted electronic versions of Mr. Hool's report before the September meeting. I'm not sure if you've received them all, but I
We have it in the
I
box.
do have a hard copy if anybody needs it.
That would be great if you could hand it out,
Okay.
and we'll mark it as Exhibit A.
Sorry, Houle.
Thanks, sir. Thank you. So, Jim, this report that has been admitted as applicant's Exhibit A analyzed a number of things, including whether redevelopment of this site is compatible with the comp plan, correct?
Yes,
Whether it meets the criteria for dimensional and special use permit relief, correct?
yes,
And whether it would impact, this use and structure would impact neighbors in the surrounding area, is that right?
that's correct.
Jim, I think they're having a hard time hearing you.
Are you? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
speak into the microphone.
So can you explain how you went through your investigation and came to your conclusions on those points?
Sure. You know, typically I will take the petition, review the petition, go to the site, look at, compare the neighborhood and the use that is being proposed, then come back, study the comp plan and the zoning code to see how each of those documents relate to the petition.
Okay. And what findings have you made based on that review?
All right, so there are really two issues. There's a special use permit for the use itself, which is allowable use, permissible allowable use in the zone. And I looked at the dimensional relief requirements for the height. The building actually conforms to all setback and lot coverage standards. It's only that height and the special use that are required in this case.
So maybe we should start on the height variance. Can you
Sure.
Can you speak to whether this application meets the criteria for dimensional relief on that height variance?
It does. It does, in my opinion, conform to the standard 603 for the height of the building, for the standards. Now, we have to look at 903 for the standards on the code. The variance, looked at all 5 standards that are required. The hardship from which the applicant suffers is due to the unique characteristics of the land. I think that that's been testified to. The land slopes rather dramatically down toward Valley Road, creates a problem in that the average grade changes, or the average grade changes so dramatically that it requires that small section is slightly above the height of 40 feet that's allowed within the zone.
And that hardship, does that result from any action taken by the applicant?
No, it has no, it's not from the prior action. The property hasn't been graded. When he bought the property, it was essentially the same grade. It hasn't really changed. I think that also, you know, we're talking about feasibility from an economic standpoint. You have to look at the fact that the office use is a declining business model. When the Navy was in full force and they were doing a lot of work off-site and farming it out, there were several buildings that were actually constructed for that use. And through the years, a lot of those have been converted. I mean, the one that sticks in my mind is 19 Valley Road, which is now being used by Women's Resource. I believe it's Women's Resource Center. And that converted, that was an office building, and I remember testifying for them on that petition when they were changing the use. And that's sort of typical. There are a lot of businesses, and as Mr. Henderson had testified, you don't have the very large businesses coming in and taking a lot of space. You have, what you have are a lot of small businesses that create an intensive management problem and a lot of turnover in office space. So I did look at that as well, because I think it's really very important when you realize that it's not just to realize greater financial gain, it's to keep a feasible use on the site and to constantly improve the uses that we have in the area. I did look at number 3, which is
general characteristic of the neighborhood. Self-storage facility is really allowable use as long as there is with a special use permit. I don't see that any physical construction of this building is going to interfere. There's not going to be any heavy traffic or lighting or noise that will be created that is going to impact anything to do with the general character of the neighborhood. There's a lot of space between the buildings. There's ample parking. As Mr. Henderson said, there's probably more than enough parking on the site. So I don't see anything that would change the general character of the neighborhood at all. The relief is the least relief necessary. I believe it is. We're only looking for a marginal amount of height on the building. So I don't think that there's any serious impact at all. The building will pretty much, very much conform to everybody in the neighborhood. And then finally, the evidence showing that the hardship would be more than a mere inconvenience. I think that is absolutely true. That it would be more than a mere inconvenience considering all the factors that we've discussed.
All right, and moving to the criteria for the granting of a special use permit, we've had some discussion and testimony so far about consistency with the comp plan. Could I ask you to speak to your findings on that criteria?
Sure. You know, one of the things that the comprehensive community plan calls for in the land use section is the protection of the community character. And it's controlling, they state, controlling the sprawl of commercial and retail development, preventing it encroaching further into residential areas is an important goal of the town. So any new commercial growth should continue to be infill development. Tear down and rebuild is an acceptable alternative within these districts, as this will allow economic development in town to meet current market standards, as well as move the town toward achieving the goal of commercial design standards. And I looked at the park itself. The Aquidneck Corporate Park is a blending of light industrial and office business. The corporate park was created for high-tech properties. We've already stated that a lot of that use is not there, but it definitely is very much a high-end storage facility, is very compatible with what you would call an industrial character. The building would replace an office building. It keeps it in the same area, and I think that it improves the character of the district. I looked at economic development. Economic development goal E1 is promoting a diverse and expanded local economy without compromising characteristics and qualities which make Middletown a desirable community. I think it would certainly do that. It certainly would be diverse. It's a new use around here. Mr. Henderson talked about Florida and California, but in fact, these have been used, they've been built in the Midwest for an extended period of time. They're very successful. They don't create any particular issues at all. They actually, most of these facilities have waiting lines to get in. They're not because they're a unique use, and because the nature of people who buy cars upwards of a couple of $100,000 don't want to just leave it on the street. So it becomes very important for them to have specialty parking areas.
So Jim, would this proposed use diminish the value of the surrounding area in any way?
No, I don't believe it would. In fact, considering considering that it's going to be used for very high-end type storage, the chances are that it's going to be better maintained than most of the buildings actually are going to be in the area. I'm sure it'll actually enhance the neighborhood.
I don't have any more direct questions for Jim, and I will open him up to questions from you.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr. Lombardi.
I'm going to go back, and you cited actually the same part of the comprehensive plan that I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
And it said it's zoned office park, which is a blending of limited industrial and office business. Limited industrial creates jobs. Office business creates jobs. This doesn't fit that definition. This does not create jobs. Now, I'll go back to what Mr. Henderson said. It's got to be built. I understand that. It creates jobs for a short period of time. When it's done, it's done. Once those cars are there, those cars are there. I don't have a problem with the concept. I just feel like you can twist the comprehensive plan in this definition any way you want, Jim. And I've heard you many times, and I respect you, your opinion. But I'm telling you that this doesn't fit. It does not create jobs. That was the whole idea of the corporate park when it's in its inception. This doesn't do that.
I think that you have to be really cognizant of the fact that in most cases, buildings themselves don't generate the work. They provide setting for people who are going to work. But you typically, you don't have an office building that creates jobs. It simply allows positioning of jobs. And I think that that's a really fine distinction that has to be really considered here, because I don't look at there are very few buildings that actually create employment.
I get what you're saying. I understand that. Again, you know, it's what language you want to talk here. Because the fact of the matter is that all of the buildings, all of the businesses, let's put it that way. Let's forget about the building piece of it. All of the businesses in the corporate park create jobs. This is not a business that creates jobs. That's what the corporate park was meant for. That was the whole idea behind it. Way back when the Navy pulled out and they were looking to create jobs, somebody had a vision of what they wanted that to be. It wasn't self-storage of any kind. It wasn't. It was to create jobs for the economy, not just Middletown, but Aquidneck Island. Now, if you go out to Portsmouth and you look at Park Place and the like out there, they have a car storage facility out there. They do. But it's a different type of a setting out there. It's an industrial park. And it fits. It fits. And they're high-end cars, by the way. I think you might well know that. You do. Park Place, right? Sure. So at the end of the day, it's got to fit. I just don't think, respectfully to Mr. Henderson and to you, I don't think this fits what the vision they had for the corporate park at the time. We can debate this all night long.
I have a question, not to
Go ahead,
take us off. It was testified earlier that, by Mr. Henderson, I think, and then I think you chimed in, Mr. Hool, that change is inevitable and this change is going to happen. We're making this change, and in reference to my peer, what's the next change? What's the next evolution? Because right next door to this is Child and Family Services that has a daycare. 2 properties down from that, you skip over, or 3, you have the YMCA, which has a daycare. So, and I understand that the planning board looked at the comp plan, and I don't necessarily have an issue with it, but my question is, you know, the word man caves was used, which, you know, I would never use that word in front of a board like this, because if that's what you're asking for, I don't think we could grant that. I don't think that's what you're asking for. But our job, per Mr. Lombardi, is once this is turned into something that's not, you know, congruent to the use in the park, right? Right now, you know, I know that other petitions have come before this board looking to put tradesman centers in the park, and they were deemed inappropriate. This is different, but what's the next iteration? Where does it stop?
If I could just, it's not a direct answer, but I just want to refocus the board on an important point, and that is that if the town council wanted to take the comp plan, the element that Mr. Lombardi was reading, and put that into effect the way he's reading it, then the self-storage would not be allowed by special use permit in the office park. Our zoning code allows for that if we meet the criteria. So yes.
But we're
that's-
stretching self-storage a little bit here, right? Because these are going to be active self-storage. Do you know of any wood shops that exist in the self-storage buildings down on Connell Highway or behind Stop and Shop off of West Main Road? And I say that only because these are going to become user-occupied with bathrooms. So they're a little bit more than self-storage, right? This is a little bit more of a use. If it were strictly self-storage, hey, you know, you got a lock, you got a door, you got air conditioning, done. They're not actively being used. I think we have a duty to really look at the special use permit. I'm not arguing against it. I'm just saying, what's next? You're saying it's allowed by right, and I'm saying
No, not
it's
by right.
allowed by right with a special use. Our job is to make sure that it meets the 5 criteria. And so, once it's switched and it's gone. But it also opens up for all the other properties to make switches. So, Mr. Hool, in your analysis, what's the occupancy rate of the industrial park right now?
Wow, I honestly can't.
But you're
answer
asking
that
us to
question.
change the use from an office to another use, so wouldn't
Well,
it
I
be
know-
appropriate
I
to
kn-
tell me that it's 50%?
Well, it's more than 50%.
Right, I know, but
Okay, I mean, it's more than 50%, although I find it very interesting because I did look on Kirby Commercial Real Estate just because I was curious how many buildings advertised for space. And he has 3 buildings listed that, for space in the park.
Right.
For office. So it is, one of the things that I just got through saying is that there's been some buildings that the use has changed across town, and I think that we're using a limited amount of, that every time a building isn't used for office, that we are creating a lower supply, which fits in with greater occupancy because the demand remains sort of flat. But one of the problems that we have is, as Blake said and I said, there's a fabric change in who rents these. That you have, if you were to go into Blake's building over the last year, they have a number of very small businesses. It's the same as the gum factory down in Newport. It's the same all the way, all the office buildings. You can rent any small office, but when you start renting small offices tend to be sole props or maybe one person, and that's a completely different animal than what this was originally intended to do in terms of having a larger type business that moves in as a Navy contractor, which is really what we
Right.
think of when we think of this park. I would like to address one thing, though, when you said about what's the next use. One thing about this particular use, there's of course no way that we can know what the next thing coming down the line. I'm hoping that's somewhat of a rhetorical question, but the thing is that when this particular use, this has a very low, it doesn't generate anywhere near the amount of traffic that an office building does. People come in their off hours, usually on weekends. They look at the car, they take the car out, they bring it back. Quite frankly, mostly in the summer.
So that relates to the special use, so I don't think it's going to be detrimental to the surrounding community, but the only thing I have a question with is with regards, as Mr. Lombardi was saying, with regards to the comprehensive plan. Now that we know that right next door is another use that I don't think was contemplated when they built the park, having Child and Family Services have their child care facility and their counseling facilities in the park as Newport Mental Health. In your expert opinion, is it detrimental to those businesses to have this use?
Oh, no. See, this is really a very benign use. so that you know, this is not going to attract huge crowds of motorcycle people, for example. You know, it isn't going to be whatever, and I'm not knocking motorcycles.
Well, you don't know
We all
that, so,
have,
I mean,
but-
don't speak to things you don't know, right?
Well, no.
Because if
look,
I own
they-
100
they-
Harleys and I buy it, and I buy 10 of the units.
The sheer cost and the restrictions that go along with these things nationwide have really been they're very restrictive as to who can use them. and how
I
to
think
use
that's the key. You just said it, the restrictions that go along with it. So when you looked at the units nationwide, what kind of restrictions did they have on them so they didn't become man caves?
Oh, yeah, they're very careful about them, and I was sort of assured by Mr. Henderson that he would be mirroring a lot of that while he was preparing it. But what they, exactly as Mr. Galvin had said, you know, they have restrictions on running businesses, and, you know, I think they have restrictions on, like, numbers of cars that you can actually put in them. You know, there's several, besides the physical constraints, there are actually rules on the use of the property. I'm not sure they have hours of use, but typically, you know, this is not the kind of use that goes long into the night or anything along that line.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Wu?
Yeah, I just want to make a point. I think our discussion now has come full circle. So I just want to kind of summarize here to say that the reason why I brought up this whole condo association when I first tried to understand what was being proposed here was to have this kind of control over this proposed facility. So I think if we go all the way back now to the statement on the planning board and the TRC's recommendation, there are definitive stipulations in there that when we consider this, those things must be abided by, even if we approve it here tonight. And one of those things was to have this kind of condo association which spelled out the use for these different garages or whatever the heck we're calling it in this overall facility. So I just wanted to say, I thought we had addressed that earlier, but I guess there were other concerns.
I have one more question. So to go to hours of operation, Mr. Henderson, hours of operation, I mean, and I'll tell you where I'm going with this, but tell me if you plan on doing that. And I didn't notice anything about lighting in the area, too.
Yeah, we did submit a lighting plan.
Okay. Hours of operation.
These will be private properties. An owner can access at any time he wishes.
I find I find a little unacceptable. And again, because you depicted it this way. Someone can go there and sit in the mezzanine, have some wine, have some cheese, or whatever they want to do, and admire their cars till 1 o'clock in the morning.
I can do that now in my office building.
But that's not the point. You're putting this in front of us, and I have a problem with that not being controlled. I think you know where I'm going.
You're going where I didn't think
I don't
anyone
want
would
somebody
go.
driving out of there half in the bag. Well,
Sir,
I
that
don't.
can happen at any
Ms.
property.
Lombardi, that's law enforcement's
I don't,
issue.
that's
We're not licensing it for a bar.
restrictions, Mr. Miller. We can impose restrictions. I think hours of operation, we should be able to do that.
How do you do that on a private property?
You don't.
I don't believe we have that right.
We don't? That's bad.
Jim, you all set?
Yeah, I'm,
You brought up economic viability, of it. In your research, what are these things generally sell for, one, and generally what do they rent for, two? What I'm getting at, and I think what Jim's getting at, is if this doesn't work, what is this going to become? You know, and so if it's gonna cost $300,000 to buy this thing, so therefore the value of it is roughly a couple $1,000s a month. Generally, does a garage space cost a couple $1,000s a month to store?
It does.
Something like that? A
it
couple
does.
thousand?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, you know, it's sort of interesting you say that, because You know, I remember a few years ago appraising one of the condos at Beachbound in Newport.
Okay.
And they have separate garages, and this one was selling with a garage. And when I valued the garage, I thought, well, you know, if you have a $3 million condominium, the chances of having a garage is not to put, you know, your 2002 Honda in it. So, you know, I had valued it very, very high, like a couple $100,000 at the time. And I thought, boy, you know, that seems just, if you're not thinking about it, it just seems kind of weird. But it was really funny because right after that, well, we had a sale of a garage right after that was like 180,000. And so I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. You know, it really is amazing that people. But then if you think about it, if you have a 1954 Gullwing Mercedes that you just spent $1.5 million on, its chances are very good. You're going to spend whatever you have to spend to have a very secure, you know, climate-controlled place to store that car. I mean, this is the market. I would be expecting that these would sell probably, you know, more like 400,000 in today's market.
Is there any other questions from the board? Any other questions for your witness, Mr. Galvin? Seeing that, I'm going to open it up to the public. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak either for or against the petition? Raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony this evening will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
My name's spelled different. It's Valarie, and my last name is Gelb, as in boy, 94 Shore Drive. If we look at the Planning Board, August 2nd, 2021, public hearing deferred to August 11th, there was no reference to the special use permit, but it also was called an auto storage building, which, based on what we're talking about tonight and what we heard, it really, and I believe Mr. Healy also said it, it's a garage. A garage is not a permitted use in this area. The Planning Board public hearing, August 11 minutes, there was no evidence that, again, they even talked about the building itself and the use. They did refer to the need for owners to have absorbent materials when working on vehicles, thus making it a garage, not storage. Item 21, the motion for positive recommendation, the condo agreement must specify that the structure would be used only for vehicle storage if you tonight permit that. This restriction would eliminate the use of owners tinkering and working on their cars. The notice of the Planning Board, August 13th, the findings made that these are intended to convey to the zoning board that the application satisfies the requirements. But if you look at point 4, it states that the plans for such project are consistent, and that's what the so-called experts tonight said it is consistent to the comprehensive plan. But there's no evidence that that had even really totally been addressed. When we talk about the zoning board agenda, August 26th, the text states Office Park Zoning District requires special use for private self-storage. Again, as pointed out above, this was never even addressed in the public hearing part of the planning board. The fact that this is not self-storage, this is a garage. If you look at the comprehensive plan regarding the Aquidneck Island Corporate Park, and being a citizen that's really concerned about the economic viability of Middletown, over the last several years, no one has bothered to say that this corporate park has been very important to our community. And what about the fact that we took out SBA loans for $218,000 to invest in that park? What about our tax-paying dollars that put approximately $1 million into that park? And to Mr. Lombardi's point, this is a corporate park, and the design of the building, although quite beautiful, and I love how it looks, I have no qualms with that. But that does not belong in a corporate park. The corporate park vision, in order to be consistent with the office park zoning, this was all about promoting the development of high-tech and defense-related industry at that location. And we could argue all we want about the fact that, you know, it's great to sell these condos. What's the town getting from that? The town is getting, yes, they're getting the real estate tax, if you will, but the reason we as a community wanted that corporate park and why we've invested millions of our dollars in that corporate park is because we wanted to create an economic waterfall, which would benefit the town in the long run. By demolishing an office building to build basically a warehouse garage, you've completely defeated the intention of the comprehensive plan. Jobs are lost to the area, impacting housing, education, and tax dollars. So the change of the use of the property does in fact impact the town tax roll. So I would say beautiful building, but doesn't belong in the office park.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else in the audience?
If I could just place an objection on the record, just to the extent that the witness who just testified, I don't believe is an aggrieved party or
No, she's,
standing. I just wanted to.
she does not have standing. She was speaking as a Middletown resident. Any other comments from the audience? Come on up. Raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony this evening will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
John Turlesner, 32 Walcott Avenue. I'm actually here for something else. Excuse me? T-E-R-L-I-S-N-E-R. I'm actually here for another hearing.
But
the
before
one
we
thing
start,
that-
can I just ask you to keep your remarks brief?
Okay,
Because
for the remarks I had come up, what got me was, is there a spill prevention plan associated with this facility? I heard 3 different things: drip pan, absorbent material, and then another was a oil waste separator system. That is a whole new ballgame. Your pond and drinking water is right down the hill. Has there been a spill prevention plan associated with this? Because that's huge. If somebody comes back, you lose oil, you lose any type of hazardous material associated with that car, it goes right down there. Plan sounded pretty good. I sort of liked it. But the one thing that got me is the ecological impact.
thank you, Jack. Mr. Galvin, I'm sure you'd like to read.
Mr. Henderson can speak to the spill prevention.
Okay, thank you.
At the planning board, this was a concern, and we addressed it. There will be no floor drains in each of these units, and they asked that I have some type of spill prevention in the design of the slab, and the result was that we would put a higher lip entering into the unit, so if there was any spillage, it could not exit the unit and could be wiped up.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Henderson. Any other participants like to speak for or against the petition? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Before I call for a motion, is there any discussion from the non-voting members?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would just like to say a few things. I'd like to start by commending Mr. Henderson for his design. It really is a very handsome structure, very beautifully architected, and also, I think, a very creative use in a difficult office market. So I feel that you deserve kudos for that to enhance the aesthetic of the corporate park. Having said that, I do believe it is the responsibility of this board in granting special use permit to ensure compliance with the comprehensive plan. We've talked about it, so I need to be brief. The corporate park is the blending of limited industrial and office business. It's created by the town to promote the development of high-tech and defense-related industry. I've driven through the park. I haven't seen any other light industrial or limited industrial. The park may have, in the 1970s, been contemplated that it would have some, but it doesn't. It's principally an office park at this point. As I understand, it's a very successful park, that there's a higher concentration of defense contractors and employees in that park than anywhere else in the state of Rhode Island. So what concerns me, if this were to be approved, is the slippery slope doctrine. I think that was the point you were raising earlier, Mr. Miller, that if we do allow this structure, because it is handsome, it is creative, it's a much better looking property than the property that's there right now, that's all true. But if we start allowing industrial, then what's next? And what happens to this park, I don't think it would be in the right direction. So were I to have been a voting member, I would vote no.
Before we continue, Mr. Galvin, do you want to wrap up before I?
Very briefly, I think, we've covered the same ground round and round, and I sympathize with some of the comments on the comp plan. I think the expert testimony that we presented shows the many elements in the comp plan that we are consistent with, trying to revitalize a difficult area in a difficult market. And I would just point out the fact that this use as a self-storage use has been talked about with town staff for almost a year now. The planner agreed that this is a self-storage use. The building official did as well. It's been vetted through.
Speaking to the microphone.
It's been vetted through, every level of review and acknowledged to be an appropriate use for a special use permit here. So I just wanted to, hit that point again, that we're applying for something that is allowed with a special use permit. I understand the points made on the comp plan. We believe the evidence suggests it's consistent with it, and I'll
Thank you, Mr.
continue the
Galvin.
discussion.
Any other non-voting members, Mr.?
I will be brief. I think my colleague just articulated exactly where I was going with the slippery slope doctrine. I think that's where I was going. And I said it a couple of times that I believe it's a good-looking plan. It's a good-looking concept. It's nothing that I don't have a problem with that. It's just what happens next. As my colleague has said, and my other colleague, that's where I'm going with this. It's just not the fit that I believe should be in the corporate park. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Lombardi. With that, I'd ask for a motion, and part of the motion, I'd like it to include all the recommendations from the planning board's memo, which is dated, I have it right here. Just reading it. I think it's 8/12, but don't quote me on that.
I think it's the 13th.
8/13. Part of the planning board's, thank you, Judith, it is August 13th, 2021. Part of what the planning board did is they actually went through and cited the special use permit and whether or not they felt that it met it. They were in agreement. So I'd like to include in the motion that they abide by all the restrictions within this document dated 8/13/2021. So can I have a motion to accept the position as presented?
I'll make the motion to grant the petition as presented.
And that's
including.
for the, just so we're clear, this is for the variance first.
Okay, the variance, right. And, including the planning board's memo of all their restrictions and their requirements of 8/13/21.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second made by Eric Curtin. Discussion?
I'm gonna vote in favor, but I believe they've met the special use requirement, and I believe that the times are changing in the town. And, you know, when I was younger, the Navy pulled out, and we brought back technology, but the same thing could happen again. So there is definitely a changing economy today. It's also, people are they're working from home and doing a lot of work from home, and office space is becoming more and more available because people aren't using it as much. So.
Any other discussion?
Having heard all the discussion, I think the efforts on behalf of the owner and what he's trying to do, and even though there is question about whether or not we're taking this in a different direction and establishing a new precedent, I think it is an improvement, and I don't think it's that far off what's currently over there in terms of the varied businesses that are currently over there. So I am also going to support this.
Yeah. Judith, you want to say anything?
I agree. I just think if we make sure that all of the stipulations that the planning board put forth in their memo dated August 13th are met, I would go forward.
Yeah, you know, I looked at the petition. I have an office that actually overlooks the facility in Portsmouth, Park Place, and the amount of traffic that goes out, in and out of there on a given week is pretty much the landscapers. And it's a very high net worth. And speaking to the concerns about what the town will get out of this, I'll just tell you a story about a 24-year-old that started a rigging business, did extremely well, made the Inc. 500 list, moved his business to Portsmouth, had $1 million of inventory, and got my 3% tax bill from the town of Portsmouth. And I was like, no, you don't pay tax on inventory. And it was taxable, so I had to pay Portsmouth a little over $30,000 for the privilege of owning a retail business. So I'm not sure we understand what the economic benefits are to the town, but I'm going to vote in favor of the variance. I think it meets the standard. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Can I have a motion to accept the special use permit?
I'll make a motion to grant the special use permit.
Thomas? Yep, with the, go ahead, I'm sorry. With all the,
With the conditions from the planning board also.
Right.
Just so it's put in there twice.
yep, I'm putting it in right now.
Of 8/13, was it? I'm sorry. 8/13/21, is that correct? Yeah, 8/13/21. Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Second by Tom Heaney. I think we've discussed it overlapping. If anyone would like to say anything now? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. With that, I'm going to ask that we take a short 8-minute recess. Back to order.
Thank you.
Mr. Heaney, if you can read the next petition.
Petition of Daniel Donovan III, owner, and Michael Sullivan, applicant, for a variance from sections SS 725B1 to install solar equipment 8 feet from the north property line where 25 feet is required. Said real estate is located at 600 Aquidneck Avenue and further identified as Lot 111A on Tax Assessor's Plat 114.
Good evening. Raise your right hand. State, do you swear the testimony this evening will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
It's Daniel Donovan, 600 Aquidneck Avenue, Middletown, Rhode Island.
Let's swear in the other gentleman at the same time. Do you swear the testimony this evening will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address in the microphone.
Michael Sullivan, 121 Broad Common Road, Bristol, Rhode Island.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Donovan, tell us about your project.
Well, we want to put in some solar panels, and the reason that I'm asking for the variance is because I own a very narrow property, and rather than have them out towards the middle of the backyard, it would be more towards the stone wall. And there's, as far as I know, there's no objections from anybody, and there's really nobody back there to object because it's all brush and
And is this your installer?
yes, this is Mike, my installer, yes.
Mike, does this meet the requirements of the Rhode Island law that's
Meets all the local and state codes, building and electrical. You know, we're seeking the variance to get the, like Dan said, to get the panels closer to the north property line to help with the aesthetics of the property.
And they're not on his roof because?
Dan's roof has, it's a hip roof with multiple angles. The amount of panels that he needs to offset his electricity bill wouldn't fit, and if we maximized all the roof surfaces, it would be essentially like, you know, Tetris on the roof. It'd be all
Right.
different scattered panels, so it would ultimately take away from the aesthetics of the house and the neighborhood as well. Just some quick info. The panels, the array is going to be 9 feet from grade level to the top of the panel, so it'd be fairly low. All black panels, safe as far as, you know, anybody going up to it and touching it. There's no physical danger or anything like that from it.
Mr. Costa, does the town have any issue with it?
I have no issues with it as far as building and zoning.
Any questions from the board for the applicant?
So it's going to be ground level, that's what you're saying? It's ground level and up?
Yes, ground level, yep.
So, just want to make sure that's what it was.
Any questions? I think we're good. We'll open it up to the public. It seems pretty straightforward. Is there anyone, you can sit down. Is there anyone that would like to speak either for or against the petition? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Can I have a motion to accept the petition as presented?
I'll make a motion to present it as, accept it as presented.
I'll second.
Motion made by Eric Curtin, second by Judith Rosenthal. Discussion?
I'm going to vote in favor of it. I believe it's a relief that's reasonably necessary for the full enjoyment of a permitted use, and it's also good for the country.
Right. Any other comments? I too am going to support it. I went out and looked at the property. There was no way it was going on the roof. I knew that. That was kind of a rhetorical question. I think it fits within the requirements of the dimensional variance, so I too am going to accept it and support it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Mr. Heaney, we are cranking. Thank you, Mr. Donovan. Yep, go right ahead.
Petition of Christine Loney, owner, and Michael P. Tierra, T-Ticket LLC, for a variance from Section 603 to replace an existing shed with a 8-foot, 5.9-inch shed with a 0 side setback where 5 feet is required, and to construct a pool pavilion on the existing deck with a 3-foot, 9-inch rear yard setback where 10 feet is required, and a 1 foot, 2-inch side yard setback where 15 feet is required. Said real estate is located at 38 Nicholson Crescent and further identified as Lot 44 on Tax Assessor's Plat 108 Southeast. There's also a special use. Petition of Christine Loney, owner, and Michael P. Tierra, T-Ticket LLC, for a special use from Sections 803B, extension of an alteration, and 902, special use permit. Real estate is located at 38 Nicholson Crescent and further identified as Lot 44 on Tax Assessor's Plat 108 Southeast.
Do you swear the testimony tonight will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
Michael Terra, Terra, 9 Anthony Street, Newport, Rhode Island.
And are you the,
I'm
I
the
know-
project manager, GC, for the project.
so you know that when you testify in front of a board like this, you're not allowed to?
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
You can
I've
ask
done
questions
it
of
for
the
myself.
owner, but you know,
The owner's here as well.
yeah, so if you want to bring her up, and she's actually got to be the one that's asking you.
All right, sorry about that.
If
I'd
you do
always
it,
done
you're
for
Oh.
practicing
myself.
law, and there's several attorneys in the audience that would,
Understood.
so, come on up. Sorry to be such a stickler, but
Okay. Hi.
raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony tonight will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
State your name and address for the record.
Christine Lowney, 38 Nicholson Crescent, Middletown, Rhode Island.
Give us a brief overview of your project.
Yeah, sure. So I have an existing shed on the left side of my property. Was there when I bought the home back in 2016. It's pretty much falling down. The door's barely open. So I wanted to redo that shed. It's already on the property line essentially.
Mhm.
And we're proposing to bring it out. I think it's another 2 feet. You know, not over their property line, but
Right.
just make it longer, 2 feet. And also a bit higher, so I can actually walk in, utilize it, put tools in it. Right now, you can't really do that, so it's just, I don't have a garage, so
Sure.
it's a nice way to store additional tools and things like that.
Have you spoken to your neighbors?
Yes, I have. I don't know, did they send a letter in support of this?
Yeah, I have one letter in support that I'll read into the record.
Okay.
but
That's from the
you-
neighbors on that side of the
Okay,
property.
perfect.
Yeah.
It
Now
references,
you-
it
okay.
references a 0-yard setback in the.
Right, but they just testified they're moving it 2 feet.
It's a 0 setback now. It's right on the property line now, the shed.
You can see it with the photographs.
Yeah.
As part of the application, there are photographs. It's denoted as Shed A, which is directly on the property line.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So you're making it less non-conforming by moving it onto your property?
No, it would be on the same property line. I'm moving it
2 feet.
2
Yeah, 2
feet
feet in.
towards, which is on my property.
You're making
That's
the
not
shed 2 feet bigger.
2 feet bigger.
Oh, but
yeah.
it's still going to stay in the same spot.
Okay.
In terms of the yeah, same spot, and it's the same property line that it is now, which is what I think that the issue is here with the variance.
How do you maintain the backside of the shed?
It's up against a fence, so there really is no maintenance. It's just, there's nothing, when you say maintain.
Maintain it. How do you paint it? How do you?
I mean, optically, I don't really need to paint it, so it's just essentially shingles on the backside of that.
Mr. Costa, do we have to, I mean, I'm kind of looking for your guidance here on a shed that's right on the
They
property.
have products that are maintenance-free that do not need to be maintained and painted. You know, today they have, you know, boards that are not wood or
Okay.
decayable. You know, that's up to you.
Okay, thank you.
Is it possible to move it in a couple feet? So someone could get back there and...
Oh, yeah, I mean, we could move it, yeah, we could do that if that's an issue for anyone on the board. So that there's a couple feet between the fence and the beginning of the shed?
Yeah, just so you can be
Yeah,
back, if in case you need to do something back there.
that's fine.
It's typically, you know, when you change something, the code has a certain set thing, and we should be asking you to go to that, but I think, I agree with Mr. Curtin, if you could leave a little bit of space back there so you can maintain it, I think that would be fine.
Sure.
Mr. Terry, do you have anything to add to it?
No, we'll be able to do that without any problem.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for the petitioner?
So to make it clear, it's gonna be the same size shed, but it's just gonna be moved 2 feet. You're gonna have 2 feet between the
No, I think
boundary line.
they testified they're gonna make it a little
Expanding
bigger.
it 2 feet.
No, it's gonna be, I mean, it's gonna be size that they're asking for.
Right,
That's what
yeah.
I'm saying.
But
But
they're
they're
gonna
just
move
gonna move it in 2 feet. I just wanted to have it clear for the record, that's all.
Thank you,
That's
yeah.
all, just for the record.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, so everyone's clear with it. You're clear and everybody is.
And I just want to read into the record a letter from William Sullivan, who is the abutter on that side. It says, "We are writing in support of the application of Ms. Christine Lowry at 38 Nicholson Crescent for a zoning variance to rebuild and increase the site of the existing shed that is sited on our shared property line. The request is reasonable and the sizing of the proposed structure is appropriate for the location. Sincerely, William Sullivan." So unless anyone has questions of the,
Speak about pool pavilion.
Get into that.
She hasn't addressed that. She addressed it,
oh yeah,
but not-
and then I think you have a pool pavilion in your building?
Yeah, that's the second
Okay.
item here. So on the other side of the property, in the backyard, there's an existing deck. And the deck was built, I guess, closer to the property lines than what's required by the town. And we're proposing to build a open-aired pavilion with a roof. There's a pool back there, and to provide shade for, you know, the folks who are using the pool. So the idea is to build that, but we're required to ask for relief, I guess, from the variance. Sorry. I'm
Right.
sorry, I didn't, I thought.
That's
I could
okay.
Speak on my behalf.
We'd be asking for relief. The minimum rear setback would be 10 feet. We would ask for 3 foot 9 inches, and the side setback is meant to be 15 feet. We're asking for 1 foot 2 inches. But as you can see on the site plan, that corner of the property is kind of a strange angled area. And right now, the actual elevated deck goes right to the property line. And then around the deck is a 6 foot high fence that's made of wood that can't be viewed from any of the properties next to that.
And the pavilion itself goes all over the deck, right? It's not,
Yes, it would be on the existing deck.
But would not cover the whole deck.
Right.
Just part of it, but it would only be on top of the deck.
And this is under the lot coverage percentage?
It is, yes.
Yeah, 25%, so this is like 23,
This, I believe it was,
I think it's 23 point something.
that's correct. 24.07%.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for the petitioner or her representative?
No.
Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. You can take your seats.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak either for or against the petition? This is the Zoom pause. Seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing. Any comments before we take a motion? Can I have a motion to accept the petition?
I'll make a motion.
To accept the petition.
Motion made by Mr. Curtin. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Judith Rosenthal. Discussion?
I'm going to vote in favor of it. Seems to be the least relief necessary.
Yeah, I too, I think it's a pretty straightforward petition. I think it's the unique characteristics of those small lots in that neighborhood are hard, and I think it's the least relief necessary to enjoy the property.
Do we,
Yep.
before we vote, do we need to amend the motion to reflect the 2-foot setback on the shed?
We could, yeah.
I don't know, I'm just asking.
They've testified under oath they're going to move it 2 feet.
Good enough for me.
So I think when Mr. Costa goes out with his building inspection, he will note that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Oh, do we have to? Oh, we have to do,
New petition.
no, we have a special use for that too. We didn't see the special use.
Right.
That's right. Ooh.
Why is there a special use for this?
Non-conforming? Well, I don't know. That's what the petitioner put in there.
I don't see a non-conforming use there.
Existing structures,
It's a single family.
yeah, I guess was added in there, 9803B,
So
it's irrelevant.
I don't think we need to hear it as a special use, because they're only asking for dimensional relief. It's an existing, I don't, and I could be wrong, but,
Now, he had 803 on that instead of the variance.
Oh, okay.
803 would have been a dimensional variance for non-conforming,
okay.
okay? And they actually put it in the special use permit.
So do we have to hear it or no?
I think you're good.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Monti, do you concur with that?
Special use for 803 is non-conforming uses.
What's the non-conforming use, though?
Well, the non-conforming structure is, is sitting there.
Yeah, I think this was a mistake.
Yeah, I think it is
The
too.
application,
Okay, so we're not going to hear,
misunderstanding of the ordinance.
Mr. Lawyer, you're ready to, you're good to go. Thank you. That was a surprise.
I'm just going to call that stricken.
Yeah. We're just going to strike that, Mr. Monti, if that's, I don't know what the right term is.
I think that's acceptable.
All right. That's what I wrote.
All right, new petitions.
Petition of Buildings of Taste LLC owners and their attorney, David P. Martlin Esquire, for a special use from sections 803A and 1103B to permit construction of a 408 square foot deck and expanded front and rear stairs and entrances within Zone 1 of the Water Protection District, accompanied by a variance rejoining from the Planning Board of Review. Said real estate is located on 170 Aquidneck Avenue and further identified as Lot 145, 146, and 147 on Tax Assessor's Plat 115 Southeast.
Do you want to read the special use at the same time?
Yep, also a special use. Petition of Buildings of Taste LLC owners and their attorney, David P. Martlin Esquire, for a variance from sections 603, 701, and 803G to allow construction of a deck with a rear yard setback of 30 feet where 50 feet is required, and a stair addition with a rear yard setback of 27 feet where 50 feet is required. Said real estate is located at 170 Aquidneck Avenue and further identified as Lot 145, 146, and 147 on Tax Assessor's Plat 115 Southeast.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, David Martland on behalf of Buildings of Taste LLC. That was a lot Mr. Heaney just read in to the record, and I think this petition is a lot more simple than one would think as a result of what was read into the record. My client, Patty Watson, who owns Buildings of Taste, she's an interior designer. She purchased the property at 170 Aquidneck Avenue, which I would refer to as the Paradise Cleaners Building, if everyone's familiar with that. It's the last building as you head in a northerly direction on Aquidneck before you hit the intersection with Valley Road. Recently, as part of our renovations and to that, I think you'll notice the building has been painted sort of an off-white color. She's trying to do what she can to upgrade the appearance of the structure. One of the proposals that she has is to construct a deck on the rear of the building, as well as rebuild the back stairs and provide a proper exit from the second floor. Currently, there is the second means of egress for the second floor is an internal set of stairs that doesn't really meet the code requirements. So this is being proposed to be an exterior stair that would meet the code requirements as part of this renovations. And that staircase ends up exiting at and ending at 27 feet to the property line. The deck is 30 feet. The building itself already encroaches into the 50-foot rear yard setback, so anything you do to this building, it's a non-conforming structure, requires a special use permit, and in this case, the variance relief that's being sought. It's also located in Zone 1 of the Watershed Protection District because of the proximity to the pond. The area in which the deck and the stairs are being built upon is already covered by a parking area. So it's already asphalt impervious surface. So they're not increasing the impervious surface with any of this. And actually, there's going to be a small reduction in some of the impervious surface located on the south side of the building, where Patty is pulling back the parking to accommodate for a landscape strip in that area, which will provide for that additional landscaping, but also to a certain extent will help provide additional area for stormwater runoff in that location. There are a number of trees that are going to be planted along the southerly property line with this. We've gone to because this now gets caught in the development plan review process as a result of the portico that's being constructed on the front of the building. We have gone to the technical review committee, who's reviewed the application, recommended favorable opinion. That went to the planning board. The planning board's reviewed the application for both development plan review and the watershed protection district. They've recommended favorable approval of the petition. And we've also gone to the Conservation Commission, and they too reviewed the petition and recommended approval of this petition. I'm trying to be as brief as I can, given the length of your docket this evening. I do have Chris Arner, who's the architect of record, with me this evening to answer any questions the board may have, but I thought, this is fairly straightforward. Anything you add to the rear of the structure is going to require a variance. So the staircase and the deck require a variance. The reason for the deck is that Patty wants to have the option to build that to provide for some outdoor space for staff and potentially meeting space. Some people are still concerned about meeting indoors, and this would provide some of that area for meetings as well as for the staff during the day.
And you're familiar with the planning board's recommendation of 8/13/2021 and all the
Yes, and I
recommendations?
think all conditions are certainly reasonable and acceptable.
And Dave, there won't be any residential use, it's not going to be used as a rental property, or it's strictly commercial?
Strictly commercial, yes. So Patty is going to be using this for her interior design business. So she's locating that from She's currently in Jamestown, bought this, putting that business here. Paradise Cleaners still operates out of the bottom. They've got a lease that was previously put in place, so they're going to continue to remain there for the time being anyway.
And your client will do all the recommendations?
That's correct.
Any questions for Mr. Martland? Go ahead, Mr.
No
Labarge.
question, just a comment. I drove by there today just to check it out, and, you know, I've kind of watched the progress they've made. It looks great. It looks much better than it did. I think it's an improvement on what was there previously, and I think it's great.
Thank you.
Good job.
And I think it helped, it's, you know, she's trying to do, you know, what the town wants in keeping with the Atlantic Beach District, and make it more pedestrian friendly with the portico that she's putting there, and you know, creating jobs, you know, in that building.
If there's no other questions, I'd like to open it up to the public, Mr. Martland. Thank you. Is there anyone here that would like to speak either for or against the petition? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Can I have a motion on the variance first?
I'll make a motion to grant variance.
Motion made by Tom Cervera,
Second.
second by Eric Curtin. Discussion?
I'm gonna vote in favor, but I believe it's a reasonable request.
I too, I went down to the property, not for this petition, but for a prior petition, and really looked at it, and the relief they're asking for is minimal based on where it's positioned on the pond. So I too am going to vote. I think it meets the requirements of the least relief necessary for a dimensional variance. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Can I have a motion on the special use permit?
I'll make a motion for the special use permit.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Tom Cervera, second by Judith Rosenthal. Discussion?
I'm gonna vote in favor, but also I believe it meets the requirement of the special use.
I'm gonna vote in favor also.
Yeah, I see no reason. I think there's 5 criteria. It meets all 5. It's not a public nuisance. It's not going to result in the diminution of property values. So I too am going to vote in favor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Martland. Mr. Martland, you're going to write the decision up, right? Yes. And get it to Mr. Acosta in a timely manner. And the next one is
24 walk.
Let me pull that one up. You go ahead, read it, I'll find it.
Here we go. Petition of Seamus Kirby, owner, by their attorney Jeremiah C. Lynch III Esquire, for a variance from Section 603 to construct a cupola. The proposed cupola height is 39 feet 6 inches, where 35 feet is permitted. Said real estate is located at 24 Walcott Avenue and further identified as Lot 4 on Tax Assessor's Plat 121 Northwest.
Good evening, Mr. Lynch.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jay Lynch on behalf of the applicant. Approximately about a half hour ago, I just realized that there are a number of objectors to this application which I was not aware of. I would, and I hate to do this, the people have been sitting here, but I'd like to continue this matter so we can go back to the drawing board and try to scale back the relief that we're looking for.
Would you like to continue it
I
to
have
the...
to continue that to the regular meeting
The regular-
in
that's-
November.
Yes,
And
we
I
can do-
will be in contact with the abutters with revised plans.
What's the date of the regular member?
23rd of November.
That's fine, Mr. Lynch. We're going
Thank
to continue this to the 23rd of November.
November 23rd.
48 Derby Road.
Petition of Stephen Ramponi, owner, for a variance from sections 603 to construct an accessory structure located 2 feet from the northern side property line where 30 feet is required, and lot coverage of 19.6% where 15% is permitted. Said real estate is located at 486 Third Beach Road and further identified as Lot 12 on Tax Assessor's Plat 130.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony this evening will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
State your name and address for the record.
Stephen Ramponi, 486 Third Beach Road, Middletown, Rhode Island.
Okay, tell us about your project, Mr. Ramboni.
Sure. First of all, thank you for hearing my application. Currently, I live in Newport, Rhode Island. We're hopefully renovating this property for my son and I to move into once the renovation is complete. Currently, my son goes to Portsmouth High, which is a 30-minute commute now, which hopefully we're hoping to cut that in half once we move a little bit closer. I did go to every abutter, not only got their approval, but they did come over and I walked the property with them. The gentleman that owns the property in the back, his first name is Dwight, came over the other day with the plans in hand. We went through everything. My neighbor on the left side, Sandy, came over multiple times, and also my abutter on the other side came over to the property as well. We are trying to, based on, I guess, financial expenses, kind of pick and choose our battles, right? We didn't want to go up and try to build the house to make it any bigger. We wanted to kind of create space outside with the garage to house what we do most of the time, which is hold our bikes and paddle boards and surfboards and things like that. We are going to significantly improve the property. It's been a rental, I think, for over 10 years. It's in okay shape, but it's lower end vinyl windows, 3 layers of shingles on the roof. Not a very pretty building. We'll be doing a full renovation. Wood windows, copper downspouts, making the property itself much nicer than what it currently is now. The structure that we're looking to add to the property is going to basically sit on the same side setback as the current 2-car garage I have on the property now. The structure that we're proposing to build has that wing off the back. A couple reasons we're asking for that is there is a older, dilapidated, abandoned building in our backyard. It's an old vet. It's a stone building, a brick a block building. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. It is a clear view into our yard. It's definitely an eyesore. And then on the other side of that is just kind of like a parking lot. The gentleman that lived there, who's deceased, who is Sandy's husband, was a vet. And actually on my lot, there's a big cement slab that's still there where I think the kennels were housed when the vet was in operation. The building that we're proposing will be using materials that are, I think, in kind to the setting of a nice natural area with red cedar shingles, all wood type materials, no vinyl siding or anything like that. We did try to design the building in a way so when you drive by from the street, this should look not much different. There's a 2-car garage there now. We try to keep the roof line a little bit lower on one end and then kind of sweeping up and then coming down again. So it's not higher than the structure, than the house that's there now. So from the street, it shouldn't look at all imposing or strange or anything like that. I know our that lot is a little bit smaller than a lot of the lots in the area, and that's why we're asking for the exception on the lot coverage. I think we're going from, I think what's allowed is 15. I think we're asking for 19 plus. My architect is here. I know we submitted some drawings, and I'm hoping that there are also pictures of the abandoned property, which I don't know if they can put them up.
We don't have them here, but I have the drawing.
I thought we had sent them in. I have some printouts if you'd like to see them, but I thought they were sent in, if in case you wanted to pull them up on the screen. But I do have a few color pictures blown up I could submit.
If we didn't have that installed in my system previously, we don't allow out of thumb drives or anything to go in our systems in the town hall.
Okay.
So I couldn't, if it's a plug and go right now, you'd have to call ahead of time, a day or so, to have it installed. You know, tonight, if you're just asking me if you can put a thumb drive
No,
in,
no,
I
no.
can't allow
I
that.
thought we had sent over the pictures. I apologize.
If you want to have Dan testify, that'll be fine. I think, you know, from reviewing your petition, the bulk of your hardship is you're in an R60 zone with a 12,000 square foot lot. So there, you can't build anything on your property and meet the setbacks.
Right. The sliver is like,
Right, so we understand that, so if you can have Dan just
Yeah, that'd be
attest to
great.
some things, that'd be great. Dan, raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony tonight be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
State your name and address for the record.
Dan Herkenrother, that's Herchenrother, and address is 36 Aquidneck Avenue, Middletown. And,
Dan, can you just tell us about the project in your words?
Yeah, just quickly, like we mentioned, it's an R60 lot, but it's only 12,000 square feet, so it's more in keeping of like an R10 size lot. When you apply the setbacks of 30 feet, you're left with a 5-foot buildable strip down the middle.
Right.
So it's kind of, I couldn't believe it was R60 when we looked at the property. And Steve wants to preserve the existing house. It's 1,000 square feet. It's a single-story house. He didn't want to have, and it's lifted above the road, he didn't want to have like a monstrosity there. So his idea was a garage with storage space. He's intending to have his home office with a bathroom in the open. It's an open mezzanine level in the garage, but it's not closed off. And then the back of the garage is just that area for storage. Like he said, that we're at 19.6% lot coverage, and we're just maintaining the 2-foot setback that is there right now with the existing garage.
Any questions for Mr. Herc or the petitioner? Sorry.
Yeah, the Herc works and,
I know.
all right, so you've got a little bit of extension on the existing garage, and then it looks like you've got 2 sheds or a bike storage and a lawn storage, and then you've got some sort of outdoor seating area or something in between the two for outdoor living space?
That's correct. Yeah, Steve could speak more to that, but he just wanted to have an area to enjoy his backyard. It's actually open. It's an open structure, just an area to have a table to eat at or hang out.
like a picnic table, so it's that section is not living space, there's no wall in front, it's open to the outdoors, and you just like be under a covered, right under like a covered picnic tables. That whole middle in the section has the back wall, has the roof, but the whole front is wide open.
Yeah, I
so
saw
it's
that was wide open in the front.
No kitchen, nothing like that, maybe an outdoor grill, but
And you said that this property formerly was rental, but you don't have any plans of,
absolutely not. We're living there full-time. We've moved 4 times in the last year. I got, separated.
you're done moving?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions from the petitioner or for the architect? I think we're good. Let me open it up and see if anyone, is there anyone here that would like to speak either for or against the petition? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. I'd like to have a motion to accept the petition as presented.
I'll make,
A motion to grant the petition.
Second. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion made by Tom Silvera, second by Judith Rosenthal. Discussion?
I'm going to vote in favor. I believe the relief is reasonably necessary for the full enjoyment of permitted use. It's a 12,000 square foot lot in an R60 zone, and there isn't really much you could do without a variance. Probably nothing you could do without a variance.
Other than go up. I mean, that's his only choice, and he chose not to do that just because of the aesthetics of the area and I guess taking into consideration his neighbor's desires too. So that was a good modification when he didn't have a whole lot of options. So I'm also going to support that.
Yeah, I think the zoning board exists for things like this because you have a 12,000 square foot lot and a 60,000 square foot zone, and there's absolutely no, you can't build a house in 5 feet. So I too am going to support it. I think it's the least relief necessary. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Oh, you're welcome. So the next one is 129. Read Mr. Holbrook's then?
Yep. Petition of Francis S. Holbrook and Robin E. Holbrook, owners, for a dimensional variance from sections 903 and 604 to construct a new single-family dwelling with a westerly side yard setback of 15 feet 2 inches, where 20 feet is required. A rear yard setback of 44 feet, where 50 feet is required. And lot coverage variance requested of 24.4%, where 20% is permitted. Said real estate is located at 129 Bailey Avenue and further identified as Lot 410 on Tax Assessor's Plat 120.
Good evening, Mr. Jackson.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, J. Russell Jackson, Miller, Scott, Holbrook, and Jackson on behalf of the applicants Francis and Robin Holbrook. The Holbrooks are looking for dimensional relief in order to build a single-family residence on this newly created conservation subdivision on Bailey Avenue, which is part of the Saltwood Farms subdivision. Because it's a conservation subdivision, the property is generally in the R40 zone. However, the subdivision itself had approval to reduce the lot size to approximately 15,000 square feet per lot to comply with the yield formula and the requirements for a conservation subdivision. The net result is it reduces substantially the allowable lot coverage and the buildable envelope as compared to a standard R40 lot, which is prevalent along Bailey Avenue, I think to the north and also to the west. So what the applicants are proposing is a single-family residence. This will be their primary residence, and they believe they come up with a plan which is consistent with many other properties in the neighborhood. But because the lot is small to begin with, and also this particular lot is the smallest lot in the Saltwood Farms subdivision, and it does have a somewhat irregular shape, meaning it narrows as you go further towards the back of the lot, therefore narrowing the buildable envelope. For those factors, they've come to the board seeking what we believe to be minor relief, a minor setback request on the west setback of approximately 4.8 feet, a minor rear setback just to accommodate for a porch roof, a portion of a porch roof, and then minor relief for lot coverage. So that's the petition that's before you. I do have Mr. Holbrook here to offer testimony to explain his project a little bit. If that pleases the board.
That would be great.
Good evening, members of the zoning board, Mr. Chairman.
As a private citizen, that's my question. Do I swear?
I am a private citizen
Okay.
of Middletown. I live at 18 Baldwin Road in Middletown.
You swear the testimony this evening will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. So this is Francis Holbrook, Holbrook, 18 Baldwin Road in Middletown. Baldwin? I'm sorry. So I'm here with my wife, Robin, and this is a request for some dimensional relief. We did submit as part of our package the site plan prepared by Northeast Engineers, as well as a proposed house, and also the building plans for the property. As Attorney Jackson indicated, there's also a floor plan for the first and second floor of the home. This is a conservation subdivision, so it's in an R40 zone. The size of the lot is much smaller. It's only 15,000 square feet versus a 40,000 square foot lot. So we were faced with a situation where the lot itself narrows from front to back. The frontage on Bailey Avenue is 101 feet. The rear lot line is 91 feet. So there's a reduction in 10 feet from front to back. That results in a narrowing of the building envelope from 60 feet in the front to 55 feet in the back. That's what necessitated the dimensional variance on the westerly side. The fact that that line basically goes in towards the lot at an angle, resulting in a inability to keep the house within the 60-foot footprint. This subdivision required approval from the developer, Peter Gallipo. We did submit these plans to him. I believe he wrote a letter of support on behalf of this petition. The plans had to be approved by him. The plans that I did submit to you show a swimming pool in the back. That's not going to happen. That just was part of the stock plan that we received. He approved the design. The intent of Mr. Gallipo was for the rear of the properties facing the open space to be attractive. So we picked a house that we felt met our needs and also accommodated his request to have a attractive view from the rear, because behind us is 8.9 acres of open space. So the trade-off is your lot size is much smaller, but you get a bigger area behind you in open space. So he approved the plans. He feels that it's compatible with the neighborhood. He owns total of 12 lots. He sold 3 or 4, so there's 7 or 8 lots remaining that have to be recorded once the drainage is complete in the subdivision. So we believe the relief is minimal. We think the lot has a unique characteristic in terms of the narrowing of the building envelope, and the hardship is the unique characteristic of the lot. So if the board has any questions, we'd be happy to answer those questions.
Did you attempt to design a lot that could fit, a house that could fit on this lot?
Did we attempt to?
Yeah.
Well, we did pick out a plan that we felt was appropriate, and the plan required a 60-foot footprint in the front, across the front of the property. Because the lot narrowed in the back, we lost that 4 or 5 feet in the back. So we like this house. It's something that, we believe fits in with the neighborhood. It's not going to be detrimental to the neighborhood, so we'd ask the board to consider those factors in reviewing the variance.
Mr. Jackson, I'm going to mark this Exhibit A, which is the letter from Mr. Gallipo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I'm just going to point out the last paragraph, which I think is, the last two. One is Mr. Gallipo's, he's Mr. Holbrook's abutting neighbor, but he points out that the development is a conservation subdivision having approximately 8.8 acres of open space, subject to a conservation easement and located to the rear of the Holbrook lot. Because this is a conservation subdivision in R40 zone, the minimum lot size is 15,000 square feet rather than the 40,000 square feet required. This results in a much reduced building envelope, but conserves open space. He goes on in the last paragraph to say that as developer, he reviews proposed house designs for compatibility with the recorded declaration and protective and restrictive covenants and other governing documents, including minimum and maximum house size. He believes that the dimensional relief, if granted, will not have a negative effect on the surrounding areas, and the relief requesting is minimal. He also believes that the Holbrook plans are compatible with our covenants and with the surrounding neighborhood generally. So in his opinion, Holbrook's proposed house will be an asset, not a detriment to the neighborhood, and he asked us to approve it. So I just wanted to make sure that was in the record.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Holbrook?
I just have one question. Is there sewer going to this lot? Water and sewer?
There's water and sewer,
Okay,
yes.
so that's all I wanted to know. Because they make these conservation things, and they're fine, there's nothing wrong with them, but when you put them close together, it's better to have water. So
Right.
that's all I want. Thank you.
And this is going to be a new permanent resident for you and Robin?
Yes, it is.
Any other questions for Mr. Holbrook or Mr. Jackson? Seeing none, I'm going to open it up to the public. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak either for or against the petition, please raise your hand. Come forward.
Good evening. My name is Paul Foley. My name is Paul.
Let me swear you in first. Do you swear the testimony today will be, raise your right hand, will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
State your name and address for the record.
Paul Foley, 467 Dogwood Road in Orange, Connecticut. 467 Dogwood Road, Orange, Connecticut.
Now, you certainly don't have standing being in Orange, Connecticut. You know that, right?
We're the owners of Lot 11 and Lot 12.
That's what I need to know. Thank you.
The submitted letter, I don't know if that made it into the record, and copies made it to the committee members.
When was it submitted?
This afternoon.
It wouldn't have made it in.
3:30?
Yeah, we don't,
I submitted it at 10 this morning.
That's another one.
we don't have a copy of it. Do you have a copy you can give us?
I do.
If you have a copy, that'd be great. You can read it too if you'd like.
Okay. We are the owners of the adjoining lots on the west side, and I'll read the letter and answer any questions. As the adjoining owners of 121 and 113 Bailey Avenue, we wish to submit the following regarding the petition of Francis S. Holbrook and Robin E. Holbrook for a dimensional variance and a lot coverage variance at 129 Bailey Avenue, Middletown. I'll paraphrase here. This subdivision was reviewed and approved in 2014 by the Middletown Planning Board, and the setbacks in the coverage existed at the time that the Holbrooks purchased the lot. And we don't believe that a hardship...
Speak into the microphone, please.
We don't believe that a hardship exists because these setbacks existed when they purchased the lot. In their 2014 approval, the planning board stated that this subdivision, this is their quote, will not create lots where physical constraints would make building on the lots impractical. We believe that it is possible to build a house on these lots inside the setbacks. As a matter of fact, our lots have virtually the same setbacks as the adjoining lot. And in addition, these lots, this subdivision has an approved drainage system, drainage plan, and if you increase the size of a structure and impervious surface on this plan, it will affect the drainage system as approved by the Rhode Island DEP in the town. Their lot is also slightly uphill from ours, so any grading work, as you move a house closer to our setback, any grading work might adversely affect, and there is no submitted plan of how the grading and the drainage might affect our lot. Anyone have any questions?
Any questions for?
So your objection is that you only want to see homes built that are within the buildable footprint?
Correct. Yeah, I mean, we believe, we purchased these lots. This subdivision was very well planned. Drainage was laid out beautifully. There's a beautiful conservation area behind. And it's our contention that if the first house approved in this subdivision is allowed to go over the setbacks on two sides and increase the variance, that opens up most of the other lots. If you look at the subdivision plans, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lots on the plan subdivision that their house will not fit on either. So to me, it's you described earlier in the meeting, someone described a slippery slope. I think it's a very slippery slope to go down as the first house in a subdivision is granted relief on setbacks and coverage. And, you know, as an adjoining landowner, I feel as if each of the 12 remaining 11 lots that are in for development in Saltwood Farm, it's quite possible that all of those owners will come to your board looking for relief.
What about the unique characteristic of the neighborhood itself? You just said that there's 8 acres of open area.
Okay.
So that you don't think that impacts the area that you pointed out, the degree of runoff, that there's 8 open acres that each of those houses abut, and all of them could make use of that in terms of being able to capture runoff, so it doesn't pose a problem to the neighbors on either side.
No, and that development has a very extensive system that does not rely on the 8 acres. It has about, I think, about 40,000 square feet of detention and pond area, which is designed based on the 22,000 square feet of asphalt, 6,000 square feet of gravel road, and 25,000 square feet of impervious surfaces on the residence. There's about 22,000 feet of asphalt. There's another 5,000 or 6,000 square feet of gravel road bed. My point is that the systems are designed to capture the runoff from the impervious surfaces that are planned, and each structure on each lot has a maximum square footage that contributes to the drainage system that your town has already approved. And I don't think that it's wise to approve variances to increase the size of the houses on the small lots. But there's no review. You'd be approving a variance and an increase in surfaces with nothing provided that shows if the drainage system is appropriate for it.
What about adjustments that address just that? The drainage system for the house that's being proposed?
What kind?
Well, there, in many different areas around the town, when homes are built, there are sometimes allowances made by the owners that are proposing the building to put in other types of water mitigation systems that address some of the concerns that you're bringing up.
Yeah.
So would you be amenable to something like that?
Well, you know, I think my question is mostly with the precedent being set of overrunning setbacks on the very first house of the subdivision. I think this is a pretty massive detention system, and as a matter of fact, you know, in a storm like this, it would show how well it's designed. I'm sure if we all went up there and looked, but I think really it's the setback and the proximity to the neighbors and granting dimensional variances on an undeveloped lot.
Mr. Monte, this is the first time I've ever had a question to look at the subdivision's retention pond. As a homeowner, isn't Mr. Holbrook responsible for his runoff regardless of what's in the system? Mr. Jackson, you can answer it.
I can respond to that. Before a building permit is issued, Mr. Holbrook and any property owner who's seeking a building permit is going to have to establish to the building official that they are not violating the ordinance by discharging any additional runoff from their lot onto a neighbor. So there's going to be a soil erosion plan that's developed along with the building plans, which will be submitted to the building official prior to the commencement of any work. I mean, as you know, Mr. Chairman, generally, when we're talking about a zoning question, we're not here generally offering drainage, storm.
Well, that was my concern, is where that jurisdiction lied. And this was the first time it was ever brought up in a system, so that was my question.
Then the last thing I'd say, and I don't want to interrupt Mr. Foley, but the last thing I'd say is that as far as the drainage system for this subdivision, being involved in this when it first started back in 2014, and it was before many hearings before the planning board, I know that a lot of this had to do with the extension of Bailey Avenue as a public road. So much of the drainage system that was developed for the subdivision, in as much as it relates to the individual lots in the open space, it also relates to resolving issues that existed over time on Bailey Road. So our argument would be that a single-family residence which may exceed lot coverage by a modest degree is not going to have an impact when we're going to develop a soil erosion program that has to satisfy the building official before a permit is issued.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Foley, any other comments?
As I said, I brought up the drainage because I don't know if this board has any jurisdiction over.
We don't.
Okay.
It goes to whether it would be a detriment in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But then we have to turn to the code and the building official, and it's the check and the balance is the building official.
Yeah.
If we were to grant it, he would still have to have an erosion control and stormwater management plan for his building.
I would just comment on the definition of the hardship. To grant a variance, you have to meet a threshold of a hardship. And if the lot was designed by the planning board and approved by the planning board, and the buyer bought the existing lot with the existing setbacks, I don't personally think that there's a hardship there. That's my opinion, but I think you would have a hard time arguing that a house that's designed bigger than the setbacks is a hardship.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Foley. Is there anyone else? Yeah, can I have a copy of your, well, can I get a copy of your letter?
I think Mr. Jackson wants to say something.
Yeah, Mr. Jackson,
Yeah,
would you like to close out?
I'll just tell him.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'd also like to point out quickly, too, that if you look at that design, obviously, even though you're not a design committee, I think it should be acknowledged that the proposal here is a two-story, single-family residence, and the second story has pitched roofing to reduce the massing. So I bring that up only because the alternative could be to build something which is a full 2 to 2.5 stories, which would not be compatible with the surrounding area. So again, these lots are inherently small. There's sort of a policy trade-off that I think it's fair for this board to consider, and that trade-off is smaller lots, smaller building envelopes, but a large adjacent open space. And when you have that situation, I don't think it's unreasonable for a property owner to come in and request minor dimensional variances so that a single-family residence, which is a use by right and a use consistent with that area, can develop a residence which is consistent with that which is around it. So to the extent that this lot is unique because of its narrowness to the rear, I think that presents somewhat of a hardship for the applicant. And I think there is an inherent tension and I would argue hardship between being in the R40 zone and also being the first conservation subdivision that was approved by the town and dealing with sort of the dynamics going forward as these individual lots get developed. We believe what's being requested is reasonable. We'll address stormwater issues as we move forward, and we would respectfully request that the board approve the application. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. If there's no other comments, I'm going to close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead.
Have an opportunity to speak?
Absolutely.
So, with respect to Mr. and Mrs. Holbrook, I do think it's a beautiful house, and I understand that the relief sought is very minor, but I am sympathetic to Mr. Foley's suggestion. There isn't, if the zoning ordinance is to mean anything, it does have setback requirements. There is no hardship, in my judgment, in that the owners could design a home that falls within those setback requirements on all sides. Another requirement of Section 903 for variance is that the problem cannot be self-created, and to me, it is self-created if you come up with a design that does not conform or fall within the requirements. So I appreciate that it's very minor, but I don't really feel that the requirements of Section 903 have been met here.
Any other discussion?
I would just say that I also agree with Mr. Foley. I think it sets a precedence for the rest of the building on those on the subdivision.
Thank you, Judith.
Jim, are we doing full discussion or is it?
Full discussion now. Well, let me get the motion now. We can do full. Can I have a motion at first, please?
I'll make the motion to grant the petition.
Motion made by Mr. Silvera. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Tom Heaney. Discussion?
I'm going to vote against the petition. I don't believe that that they made an attempt to create a home that can fit on the lot. So, in addition to that, I think these conservation developments were done, and everyone, whether it was the developer, Mr. Gallipo, or the purchaser, knew that it was a reduced size lot within an R40 zone and the setbacks, that you would have to adhere to all of those setbacks. So those two reasons I'm going to vote against.
Any other discussion?
I'm going to vote in favor of it because I believe that when you narrow a lot down from R40 to, when you make a conservation subdivision, and they expect to build houses on these subdivisions, and I think it's a very minor amount of relief, so I'm gonna vote in favor of it.
Yeah, I'm also going to vote in favor of it. I think, I appreciate Mr. Foley's comments, but we're going to hear these over and over again. I don't think this is going to be the last hearing that we'll hear of a small lot in an R40 zone. There's a lot of issues with the conservation subdivision, especially being the first one. So I'm gonna vote in favor of it. Mr. Heaney?
I'm also going to support it. I do think that, again, based on the way that these lots are zoned, you've got R40 frontage on the front of your lot, but the lots aren't, they're not symmetrical. You don't have it on the back, and I agree that this is a minor ask for the lot in the surrounding area, as I stated before. So I'm going to support it.
By my count, I'll take a formal vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion is 3-2. And Mr. Costa, I can't remember, did dimensional variance go with a 3-2 or is it a 4?
4-1.
So-
I believe it's 4-1.
I'm not sure. I thought that was, Mr. Jackson, your memory?
I do believe it's a 4-1 vote, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so motion fails, 3-2.
Thank you.
And look at the
And do we want to do one more, or do we want to?
Yeah, let's get them.
Let's do one more.
all right.
We're going to hear one more here. Our normal stop time is 9 o'clock, so we're going to hear the petition of Kevin Hyman and Alexandra Sassi, and then that's going to be our last petition tonight because we're going to run up against the hard stop. So go ahead, read it in, Mr. Haney.
Petition of J. Kevin Hyman and Alexandria Sassi owners, and J. Kevin Hyman applicant, and their attorney, James F. Hyman Esquire, for a variance from Section 603 to construct a second story on their already existing single-story dwelling footprint that is located at a distance of 48 feet 1 inch from the rear property where 60 feet is required. Also included is a rear first floor deck, 20 by 10, on the north side, located 31 feet 1 inch from the rear property line where 60 feet is required. Said real estate is located at 162 Peckham Avenue and further identified as Lot 79 on Tax Assessor's Plat 128.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is James Hyman. I'm an attorney with offices at 850 Aquidneck Avenue in Middletown. I'm representing my son and daughter-in-law in this matter, and we have submitted, and I hope the board has, surveys showing the setback relief we're requesting, and it was submitted, and it was a survey by Michael Gaston. This property, Michael Gaston, surveys dated September 22nd, 2021. This house was purchased last January. It was a one-story building and was built in approximately 1965, so it needs renovation. It's located in the neighborhood of similar structures, but it is in an R40 zone, and the lot only has 13,000 square feet. I brought a photo of the house and some maps which will help us identify the surrounding area, if I could submit those for
That would be
exhibit.
great. We'll call those exhibit, how many, you have two?
The first one will be the building photo, that would be exhibit A.
Okay.
The second would be the town GIS map, lot 79, that would be exhibit B. And the third would be the tax assessor's map of 128.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And there's several copies.
Okay.
B was the geotech.
Also in the file, there should be the building plans, which was submitted, and the setback relief required is because in the rear yard, you need 60 feet. And the house, when it was constructed in 1965, was located after survey 49 feet, which puts it 11 feet into the setback area. What this request is asking is that they be allowed to put the second story on the same footprint and then have a small deck on the back 10 feet to the rear and 20 feet wide, as shown on the survey. I have Kevin here to testify and Lexi if the board has questions.
Okay. Let me swear him in. I'll swear you in one at a time. Raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony tonight be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You got to speak right into the mic.
I do.
And state your name and address for the record.
Alexandra Saucy, 162 Peckham Ave,
Okay.
Middletown.
And your husband or? Do you swear the testimony tonight be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
James Kevin Hyman, 162 Peckham Ave.
Okay, thank you. You can ask questions or they can talk freely.
Well, it's not your, why are you doing the second floor?
We bought this house and we planned on, after purchasing it, putting on a second-story addition to have 3 bedrooms. It currently has 3 bedrooms, and we need a little more living space to grow our family and live there as long as we can.
Okay, great. And that's going over the existing envelope, so there's no
That's right.
other setback problems. Any questions for the?
No.
I think it's a pretty straightforward request. Have you talked to your neighbors? Does anyone have a problem?
We've talked to the neighbors, no issues brought up.
I think there is one letter in the file from Lansdale M. Peterson at 128 Peckham, speaking highly of you and saying that it's a great asset to the neighborhood. And so I think, let me just open up and see if anyone wants to speak either for or against it. So that's, you guys can sit down. Come on up. Raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony this evening will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
Andrew Dickinson, 192 Peckham Avenue.
Okay.
Short and sweet. This is a very modest project. It is very fitting with the kind of old school neighborhood street that we have here. They're wonderful people. They're clean. They're responsible. And probably going to end the evening with this is that the silver lining is here is that they actually came and they knocked on everybody's door in the neighborhood and they said, hey, we're thinking about doing this modest, small project, certainly compared to other things going on in the neighborhood. Sat down with their plans, dotted their I's, crossed their T's, and I think that should absolutely be rewarded, and I fully encourage it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak either for or against the petition? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Can I have a motion to accept the petition as presented?
I'll make a motion to accept. Excuse me.
I'll second it.
First made by Judith Rosenthal, second by Tom Silvera. Discussion open for anyone?
Well, I'm gonna vote in favor of it. I believe the relief is reasonably necessary for the full enjoyment of permitted use. I'm very familiar with the area, and there will be no detriment to the neighborhood.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Good luck.
You do have to write the decision. Thank you for bringing that up. You won't end up on our delinquent list. We have a long list of delinquencies, but thank you. If you can get that to the office, that'd be great. Gentlemen, I will ask, we have one petitioner left. If we want to hear it, we can.
Let's do it.
They've been patient. That petition lasted 5 minutes.
Lady and gentlemen.
Mr. Heaney, if you can read the next one into the record.
I'll try.
And then this will be our last petition.
Thank you, guys.
Petition of Creative Properties Incorporated, CO, Aegeus, I guess, Publishing Group, owners.
Nope. Let's see here. Where am I?
They left.
Yeah, they left. It's Allison Rigo. I'm looking for it.
You're Allison
It's
Reed.
a tattoo
Oh, I see it.
shop.
I got it. Yep.
It's at the end of the list.
I got it.
Yep.
All right.
Theodore Platt.
Let me got to read it in here. Petition of Theodore Platts, TJ Realty LLC owners and Allison Rigo applicant for a special use permit from Section 602 to operate a personal service tattoo shop where it is not specifically outlined. Said real estate is located at 146 Aquidneck Avenue and further identified as Lot 141 on Tax Assessor's Plat 115 Southeast.
I'm
You
Allison
s-
Rigo. Yep.
Do you swear the testimony tonight be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record, please.
Allison Rigo, 259 Main Street, Warren, Rhode Island.
Okay, tell us about your project.
Okay, so I am a professional licensed tattoo artist in the state of Rhode Island. I currently work out of Portsmouth. My tattoo shop now is called Dragon Lily Tattoo. It's been around for about 15 years on the island, has a great reputation. The owner is actually had a baby and is looking to grow her family, so she is separating from the business, so I'm looking to move forward and start my own. I was a Middletown resident for a long time. I love Middletown. I love the beaches. I always get my beach pass. I'm always there. And I've dreamed of having this location, and I've looked and I've looked and I've looked, and it never came up. And then one day, 146 Aquidneck Ave popped up, and I jumped on it. Got a real estate agent to check it out with me, met Ted, the owner of the property, and there's like a beautiful view of the reservoir, a giant plate glass window inside, and it just took my breath away, and I wanted to move forward with it, and so then I reached out to the town and was told that I needed to get a special use permit because it was not specified otherwise.
Any questions of the applicant?
No.
You're licensed under the state of Rhode Island, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Costa, that's allowed in that area, correct?
So I matched the special use permit up to the same other operations we
Right.
have on the island.
So you're covered under the health
Yep.
and safety of the state. I think it's pretty straight. You're our second tattoo parlor, right?
She's going to move from where she is right now.
Yes.
No, we have one on West Main Road that we granted probably 4 years ago. I don't have any questions unless somebody on the board does.
Other than putting the business at this location, you're not planning on altering the building at all?
No, not at all.
At this point, anyway.
Yep, it's actually just been repainted. The sign structure is already there. I know I have to go through a different sign process, but there'll be a smallish sign off the side of the building. But other than that, there's an awning that is gonna be replaced.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Can I have I'm going to close the public hearing. We're good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
There's nobody else in the audience, so I don't think there's anyone that's going to speak for or against the petition. So I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
I'll make the motion, Frank.
Tom Silvera made the first. Do I have a second?
Second.
Eric Kurt made the second. Real quickly, the reason why these uses require special use is to protect, the citizens of Middletown and make sure it's not going to be a detriment.
Absolutely, yep.
I believe that your plan meets the 5 criteria. It's not going to create any issue in the neighborhood. It's not going to diminish property values. and it's not going to be a safety issue, so that's why I'm going to support the special use permit. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you for your
Thank you guys
patience.
so much.
Good luck.
And with that, can I have a motion to close the meeting?
Wait, you need a motion.
Wait a minute.
Mr. Chairman, Bridgewater was just sitting here, not 15 minutes ago, for that one on 796 Aquidneck. The attorney's been sitting here all night. Did he mention he was leaving?
Nope.
They left because he said they were going to have a hard stop and weren't going to hear any more proposals.
Because there was
That's
two of
why he
them
left.
here. One came to me, that Stephen Sullivan came to me and said
Right.
he was told to come back.
Right, he was.
But I don't believe that was the breakwater, but if they're not, if they walked out, they walked out.
They walked out because the chairman said we were going to have a hard stop at 9 o'clock. That's why they walked out.
Okay.
I went 11 minutes over. Can I have a motion to close the meeting?
Close the
Make motion, close the meeting.
Second?
I second.